Sekeres and Price for Friday, June 27th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center, in this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price virtually. He's in Toronto doing duty, and Mike Rogerson and his four Junos hitting switches and conducting things. This is our NHL Draft Day special program. The proceedings are just underway from Los Angeles, with the New York Islanders on the clock with the first overall pick, and boy, have they been busy here today. As of this moment, partner, the Vancouver Canucks own the 15th overall selection and may actually select a player here midway through this first round. I know.
Like, honestly, there wasn't a part of me that would thought that we would get to this point on draft day with the Vancouver Canucks still holding on to possession of this 15th overall pick. Yep. And there's a bunch of different reasons for it. Yeah, a little downgraded opinion of this draft is part of it. But I think paralysis for the Vancouver Canucks in terms of cap situation as well. And here we are. Cam Robinson looking more and more sizzling with his take. The Vancouver Canucks will draft at 15. We are, I don't know, inside of an hour away from that happening.
Yeah, about an hour or so. We shall see. The New York Islanders have made their selection, and it is the player that everybody anticipated. This is defenseman Matthew Schaefer, a Canadian World Junior from the Erie Otters. Of course, he missed a large portion of this season with injury, but had already put forward his case to go first overall in a draft that, yes, may lack star power if you talk to scouts and compare it to other drafts. But he's a smooth skating left shot defenseman, 6'2", 186 pounds. He will grow into that frame. People think he'll be an all-around defenseman, helping you both on the offense and the defensive side, as a skater, as a passer, as a shutdown guy who contributes offense. And of course, the New York Islanders making a huge trade today to move Noah Dobson on to the Montreal Canadiens. So a big defense need on the top pair there for the Islanders. As for the Canucks, Blake, I think what is becoming coming into clearer picture here is that if there is a trade to be made, it is going to be a little closer to when they're on the clock at pick number 15, that an acquiring team would want to know who is available to them with that 15th overall pick if they're going to make the move. I will say this, though, and we've talked about this all week, is a game of chicken playing out here with Bill Guerin and the Minnesota Wild on center Marco Rossi. Guerin wants roster players. At first he wanted a center back. Then he modified and said, okay, I'll take a winger back, but we want to replace some of the points that Marco Rossi brought to the table. Because of the slight stature, doesn't sound like there's a robust market for this player. Is he going to have to accept futures in any kind of deal? And will that be the Canucks pick at 15th overall when he knows who's going to be available for selection?
Does the 15th overall and Dakota Joshua get it done, do you think?
Well, I mean, he turned down 15th overall and a player. We don't know who that player was, but yes, Dakota Joshua, a player with size on a reasonable contract. That makes sense for Bill Guerin. And I'll say this, Blake. I did not think that 15th overall was going to go very far by way of currency because of what scouts think of this draft, but also because, as we've talked about, that you have all these teams across the league that are looking to improve in the here and now and have the cap space to do it. But when I look at some of the trades that have gone down this week, and we discussed them on shows earlier this week, it is not exactly playing out as the massive sellers market that we thought it would be. Reasonable prices on players like Mason Marchment, going to Seattle Kraken from Dallas. Trevor Zegras going from Anaheim to Philly on JJ Peterka. Everybody was surprised that he went for just what he went for. And that, Blake, I think you can say that continued today with the Noah Dobson trade. Emil Heineman is a nice bottom six forward, and 2 first-round picks. Sounds great, but they're picks 16, 17 in a weaker draft. So
Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood, too. I mean, not expensive.
No, it has not been as expensive as we thought it might be to acquire NHL roster talent, despite the fact there's so many teams out there that want NHL roster talent over any kind of future green bananas, as they say now in the industry. So we'll see. We'll see if the closer we get to pick 15, and particularly if there are players on the board there, Blake, that GMs, other teams didn't anticipate being there. And I think there's a halfway decent chance about that. We really hadn't drilled down too much on that in our coverage leading up to this draft because we just didn't expect the Canucks would use this 15th overall pick. But we did do a hit with our friend Cam Robinson, draft expert from Elite Prospects, about a month ago, where he mused, like, does a Roger McQueen, because of his back injury, the big Brandon centerman, fall to 15 because some teams are scared off the medicals, and then you got other teams that are comfortable with the medicals going, oh my God, Roger McQueen's there. We think he's one of the top 5 talents in the draft. So there's that sort of route. And then there's also, when you have a class like this, where not many of the forwards have scouts going gaga. I mean, Michael Misa, who will probably go here second overall to San Jose, and Anton Fondell, the Swedish Djurgården's center iceman, they may be the only 2 guys who profile as number 1 centers in this draft. I've heard it described as a second-line center draft. There are questions and concerns about a number of these forwards in terms of how much their offense will translate to the NHL. And when you get a storm like that, you're more likely to see teams go off the board. Trust their scouts, trust their lists as opposed to what the public consensus lists are, and take guys a little earlier that people didn't expect to be going so early. So I do wonder whether one of those 2 factors plays into the Canucks' favor here as the board plays out, where maybe there's a player there that a lot of teams like more than 15th overall, right?
Well, the size guys, I think, have got some helium. So McQueen, people were very reserved on McQueen going back like 4 or 5 weeks ago. I think that's changed. I think people are pretty satisfied with the health reports that they're getting on McQueen. And I'm going to guess that he's gone by 15. And Radim Murka, the towering defenseman, I think closer to the draft, we're starting to see the hockey men start to salivate at the size. Yep. And I think that those 2 guys are probably gone. But high skill guys that maybe were thought to be a little bit lower, like a Sasha Boumediene coming off his 2 points per game performance at the U18s, maybe guys like that, people take a roll of the dice on a guy like that because of the high-end skill that, maybe people want to sneak up and make sure that they grab him before he's gone as well. We'll see. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. We do anticipate 3 British Columbians going in this first round. Lyndon Lakovic is a big winger with the Moose Jaw Warriors of the Western Hockey League. He's from Kelowna. Joshua Ravensbergen, the top-rated goaltender in this class of the Prince George Cougars in North Vancouver. Anticipate that he will go, although probably a little later in the first round. And then there's Ben Kindle, the forward for the Calgary Hitmen. He's a Burnaby kid who has some offensive pedigree as well. Be surprised if anyone other than Lakovic goes in the first 15 picks. And actually, Lakovic on a lot of these public lists lines up right there for the Vancouver Canucks. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, anticipating 3 British Columbians to go in this first round. We're also wondering about Vancouver Giants winner Cameron Schmidt. Bit of a polarizing player because he's 5'7", and the attitude sometimes wanes, but tons of skill. In fact, I was talking to one WHL player this week who said, bar none, the fastest player he's ever played against, Cameron Schmidt. So we'll see if someone's going to take a crack on him.
And if you're looking for a player to win pregame keep-ups in the hallway, Kindle is your man, of course, being the
Right.
offspring of two Whitecaps players, Steve Kindle, a well-known soccer figure, both professionally, and then he's taken over different academies in his post-playing days as well. So, yeah, a lot of soccer chops if you get Kindle as well.
Kindle had the opportunity at one point to go down the pro path for a couple of sports there. So, yes, San Jose is just about through its allotted time here. And for many, there's a little bit of intrigue here. Are they going to pass on Michael Misa? Things have been awfully quiet. I saw one tweet earlier today saying, boy, like, I'll hand it to Mike Greer. He has really kept a lid on what he's going to do with this pick. Michael Misa is expected here. He's a scorer with out of Saginaw in the Ontario Hockey League. The question here with Misa is he going to play center in the NHL? I think most people think he will, but he'll be more a shoot-first center, so you're probably going to have to play him with more of a playmaker on the wing. The profile here is a little bit more down the, Jeremy Roenick, Jeff Carter. I hesitate to go as high as Austin Matthews because that's a lot of goals, but that profile of center, a guy who's going to be more a finisher than he is going to be a playmaker. So we'll see if they go Misa, or we'll see if they pull the first big surprise. Anton Fondell of Djurgårdens in the Swedish League would be the other player that most people think could factor here. And then I suppose there's a left field chance of Caleb Desnoyers, the Moncton centerman, Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien, a couple of the other centermen that we anticipate going.
Or you draft James Hagens and you hold the Islanders for ransom.
Hostage, yeah. So James Hagens was the consensus first overall pick in this draft until this past year. Did not have a great year. Now, it is particularly difficult for a young man of that age because he's even a year ahead of schedule. He's already at Boston College, as opposed to some of the players in this draft who will be only heading
Which is good developmentally, but in terms of counting stats,
that's it.
You take a hit.
The problem is he's slight. He's 5'10", 5'11". He's 170 pounds. So teams are looking at him and saying, look, at best he profiles as a second-line center. The skill is there, absolutely. He played on a very good line at Boston College this year with some high picks. But yes, the whole MO we're led to believe of the Noah Dobson trade earlier today to the Montreal Canadiens was so that the New York Islanders had the draft capital to be able to move up from those Montreal picks. And if you're not familiar with the trade, it was Emil Heineman and picks 16 and 17 going from Montreal to the Islanders for Noah Dobson. Noah Dobson got a huge contract extension as a part of this deal, but the idea was the Islanders were now going to try and take these picks, 16 and 17, and they may need to package more up and find themselves in the top 10 taking James Hagens. There is also word that Hagens might be the green room guy who falls in this draft, not necessarily guaranteed of being a top 10 pick, as some of these other centers seemingly have risen more and gotten more helium late in the draft process than he has.
I having watched this guy in person on a number of occasions, World Under 17s, the guy is special. Like I think he's a National Hockey League player. I really do. I think he's got a lot of skill. I don't know when that's going to be that he's a National Hockey League player, but I mean, in his age group, he was dominant. That's who you're judging yourself against. And I would be, first overall, no. But if you can get James Hagens below number 4, I think you're doing pretty well. Like that seems like a pretty safe bet. But we'll see if he does get past wherever the Islanders can find themselves again if they're able to move up in the draft here one more time.
We have our first celebrity guest picker here, Blake, with the draft in Los Angeles. WWE superstar Bailey, who is a noted San Jose Sharks fan, was just introduced by Commissioner Bettman and came onto the stage to make the selection. And it is Michael Misa, the forward with the Saginaw Spirit of the Ontario Hockey League, who goes number 2 overall to the Sharks. San Jose building quite a nice young core there when you think of Macklin Celebrini, who had a special rookie season, Will Smith, his running mate. Of course, they have Sam Dickinson, who was a top 10 pick last year, a big defenseman with the London Knights, and they win the Memorial Cup. And now Michael Misa, who was a rare, exceptional player in the OHL. He started playing full-time OHL duty at age 15 years old, Blake, and it is a very, very short list of guys who have done that over the years. He wound up scoring 56 points in his 15-year-old season and got all the way up to 134 with 62 goals this season. So he had an absolutely monster year. People thought that he would, be a top 5, top 10 pick for sure, but he really vaulted himself into this second overall selection, and he had some buzz about first overall. Go back a few weeks ago, there was a question about whether the Islanders would go with the defenseman or go with Michael Misa.
I think he's not obviously at a McDavid level in terms of a prospect, but I do think for anybody that's below that level, that sure thing level, I think you get some prospect fatigue sometimes, and we've had this guy's name for a long time since he became the exceptional player in the OHL. So I think he may have even outperformed that fatigue a little bit. And I'm again, he is not at the McDavid sure thing prospect level. But I think people might be looking back at our categorization that there's no special players in this draft a little bit different. I think Michael Misa's got a chance to redeem the draft here.
Yeah, and boy, is it going to be fun watching him and Celebrini and Smith with the San Jose Sharks.
Crazy core.
He has also gone with the baby blue fit there, so it looked like he was trying to coordinate with the San Jose colors, the teal, as he's found.
By the way, early reviews are rolling in about the non-centralized draft, and the look of it is very slick. When you look at the stage, it's almost like the Las Vegas Sphere sort of feel. Like, it's a beautiful look. The problem, again, no team staff to announce the picks. The guys go up. Schaefer started crying on stage.
I saw
but
that.
He's by himself.
There's no one to console.
The executives are on a little side screen, and he's sort of thanking them like Star Trek style. It's not great. Yeah. It's a great human moment, the NHL draft.
Yes, it is.
They've sanitized it and covered it in like lacquer, and it doesn't look great.
So you're telling me Gary isn't the great consoler? He's not going to have 30 kids crying on his shoulder here today?
I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of consoling going. The one thing we can say is, from all reports, this is one and done.
Yes.
And from all reports, the commissioner himself hates this idea of a decentralized draft.
Yes.
And Blake,
he's blamed the teams.
Rare occasion, I find myself in 100% agreement with the commissioner. The NHL had something special with the teams operating on the floor. It was distinctive from all the other drafts in the North American Big Four sports leagues. It gave the fans, both in attendance and watching on television, the voyeurism of, oh, look, so-and-so is up talking to this. He just walked over to the Vancouver table. Oh, they're taking a private moment. Those two GMs over by that corner. It was, and we've covered a lot of these live. It was really good theater, frankly. And so I'm very pleased that they're going to go back to what they had following this year, because it was a signature of the NHL. And you're absolutely right. There are things that are lost when you go to a commissioner or even celebrity guest pickers making the selections for the kid on stage, but with none of the group that actually made the selection on hand.
There's a lot of times we make fun of the NHL because it looks a lot more small town than the other leagues in a lot of ways. This is one time where if it looks a little more small town, I don't mind. This is your grassroots. So if you look a little grassrootsy, I don't think it minds. And they're still going to have the glitz and the glamour and the seamless screens behind, no matter where they are, whether it's centralized or not. So it'll still look slick enough. But I think the NHL told draft stories better than most of the other leagues did, and they've lost a little bit of that, I think, with this. But as you said, Thankfully, I don't think we need to, get on a soapbox and say, don't do this ever again. I think they know already that they're not going to do this again.
A reminder to everybody following along on YouTube, the Super Chat is open. As always, hit that Super Chat button if you've got a question for us. Partial proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation. We had one we had one towards the end of yesterday's show we didn't get to. This is Dopita Demetrius says Joshua Kane Sherwood will throw 700 to 800 hits combined next year. This is more than some teams' entire top 9, top 12 forwards. Think about it. Yeah, and we'll talk a little Evander Kane later in the program, hear from Evander after his press conference yesterday. But as currently constructed, the Vancouver Canucks could be quite a physical team on the wing for next season.
And that's a good thing. That would be an interesting calling card in the wake of, or in the absence of skill. To be harder to play against could be really interesting. Or you can look at it as, hey, that's a surplus of something that you don't need to have a ton of in terms of, hit parades. And if you had Sherwood and Kane, that would probably be enough. I don't know what Dakota Joshua's trade value is right now, given the season that he had, which had all sorts of reasons and good ones as to why it was a drop-off. But that might be a player the Canucks could put in play that some teams would find some value in. So we'll see if the three of them are Vancouver Canucks next year.
And, of course, Conor Garland plays a rambunctious style. And the news yesterday, the reports that Conor Garland and the Vancouver Canucks are working towards a 6-year, $6 million per year extension that would take him to age 36, Blake. We did wonder at the end of the season when Garland talked about loving it here in Vancouver and wanting to stay and being extension eligible come July 1st. He is not extension eligible until Tuesday when the new league year begins. And we also talked about it this week in terms of if the Canucks strike out on getting that top two center, like if Evander Kane is as good as they're going to do in terms of forward additions, do you then pivot to taking care of some of your own business? Not to mention a bone to throw the fans, because Conor Garland is a very popular player here. He will play this coming season at just shy of $5 million, the final year of the first extension he signed in Vancouver. You may remember that. That was done quickly after the trade that netted him from the then Arizona Coyotes. It was a Jim Benning contract extension. And this would be the second one, Blake, which would kick in not this coming year, but the season after. And that is what has some people concerned. This is an awful lot of term for a guy who's going to begin this contract at age 30.
The cap hit I've got no issues with whatsoever, Matt. It's just the fact that you're paying an undersized guy for that long, right to the point of 35. It's a lot for me, the term. But you're not going to get that cap hit probably with a smaller term, right? You would have had to pay more. So,
And David Quadrelli worked it out here. We have it on the screen there for those who are following on visual platforms. His $4.95 million takes up 5.21% of the cap. When the extension kicks in, $6 million takes up 5.76% of the cap. And by year 2 of the extension, and this is when the upper limit is expected to get to $113.5 million, Garland takes up just 5.28%.
Basically right back to where he is now.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, those are proposed increases to the cap. We anticipate they're going to happen, but we have seen some things here over the last 10 years that have affected the cap.
No, you're right, Matt, but the fact they're at 0% escrow right now, there's a long road to hoe for them to get to the point of having to deflate those values. So, and I think
you have more confidence today than a couple of months ago when they first announced that those will be the upper limits going forward. But I do feel a need to caveat there because we have seen so much in this world, whether it's pandemic or whether it's trade wars, affect economies, finances everywhere. So we got to leave open that possibility. But
so
yes,
I don't mind those next 3 years that we just talked about in that tweet. Remember, his last year of this current contract is coming up here, and then 2 more of the new one. Those 3 years, I think Conor Garland is Conor Garland. My concern would start to come in the year after that. And at that point, Matt, you still have 4 more years on that contract. Now, beyond that, we said that at the end of that 3rd year, he is effectively taking up the same amount of cap as he is currently. Presumably, the cap is at worst flat, most likely going up a smidge. So then he starts to take up less than what he's taking up now, at which point you comfortably have him in the bottom 6. Like if he's playing top 6, that would actually be a good sign. That means he's, sort of outplaying his age at that point. And if he's, a third line agitating 40-point guy, that's probably not the end of the world, because he'll be now taking up even less of the cap. So we'll see. It has the potential to be a pretty painless contract, but it's up to Conor Garland to keep up the level of play that he's been at now for 3, 4, 5 years.
So we're awfully chalky in Los Angeles. The Chicago Blackhawks have made their selection. It is the 3rd overall pick. They did take Anton Fondell, the big Swedish center iceman. So this draft is falling in the order we anticipated, and now is where it gets pretty crazy with this Utah 4th overall. We'll get into that in a second. But first on Fondell, a 6'1.25", 204-pound center iceman from Djurgårdens in the Swedish league. He played in the Allsvenskan this year, not in the top level of Swedish hockey, but really improved as the second half went along. Got a lot of points in the second half. This is a big man. We always talk about it, Blake, on draft day. When you see the guys that are 200 pounds, you're talking about guys who are already got NHL bodies, NHL physiques, that appeals to scouts, not only because of what we see in the Stanley Cup playoffs and how it turns into a heavy game, but also because you're not sitting there looking to get them in the gym and get them physically mature over 2 to 3 years. Fondell is noted for his power game. He's got a big shot. He plays heavy. This isn't your Swede of yesteryear. The questions there are, does he have enough skill and puck handle that he's going to, be a distributor at center ice, or being good enough that he figures as a 1C? In some regards, a little bit like Misa. Are we talking about a guy who's going to be mostly a finisher from the center ice position? But needless to say, a two-way center iceman here, that if he slots as your number 2, or even if you have to move him to the wing and he becomes one of your primary goal scorers on the wing, should be a very welcome sight for North Vancouver's Connor Bedard, who seemed to be chafing with all the losing in Chicago this season.
And he's not going to be helping them for a couple of years, but yeah, down the road, you can see that being a perfect fit with the undersized Bedard playing with a heavy playing centerman. So that certainly works. And playing in the Allsvenskan, not a concern at this level, at this age. I think it's a good spot because he'll get more ice there than he would at the SHL. You remember Elias Pettersson played one more year. He played draft +1 in the Allsvenskan as well. So, I think he's got the chance to develop the offensive game even more. But 25 points in 29 Allsvenskan games, like at that level, at that age, I don't think that's a problem at all. That sounds like a pretty productive player at the moment already. He's an intriguing player. And
he is.
The Swedish forwards are starting to develop a different template from Swedish forwards of years gone by, and we're seeing that from some of the Florida Panthers, of course, and elsewhere, where they've developed some tenacity and an all-around game that has got a lot of coaches and general managers salivating that they are an integral part of a winning hockey club.
Yeah, and the thing that I've read about this kid is like easy power. Like he's just naturally strong. He's just it comes to him honestly.
Different position, but Adrian Kempe
exactly
is strong, ox-like. It doesn't look like he has to go out of his way to be strong,
That's it. Kempe has become such a good NHL player because he's a damn good skater and because he's strong and he's willing to play heavy and in tight and physical. Like he's not the most gifted offensive, hands guy, but he has made himself into an excellent NHL player by taking advantage of the athletic tools, and that could very well be the case for Anton Fondell as he matriculates to the NHL. I anticipate, like, I'm not sure outside of Misa or Schaefer that you've got a lot of guys from this class playing in the NHL next year. Porter Martone, the big winger from Mississauga, probably has the stature to do it. Desnoyers, because he plays such a smart defensive game, maybe there's an outside chance there. But Fondell, I mean, I could easily see this guy playing one more year in Sweden than being in the NHL.
Yeah, perhaps, absolutely, perhaps.
Kind of like Leo Carlsson from a couple of years ago, the second overall pick to Anaheim. So here's the deal. Utah at number 4. This is the first pick is the Utah Mammoth, because remember last year they were the Utah Hockey Club. And there was a whole lot of trade chatter around this pick. This pick has been in play. This is Utah willing to move this pick for some time. I mean, almost after they won the lottery, because you remember this is one of the teams that jumped up the 10 spots, won the lottery. Almost from the moment that happened, you had people speculating on the availability of this pick because under the new ownership and in the new city, they very much want to take a step forward. Well, they swung a huge trade this week for Buffalo's J.J. Peterka. And the crazy part is it didn't cost them this pick. It cost them the defenseman Michael Kesselring, the right-shot defenseman who's on a very cheap and good contract, and it cost them Shane Doan's kid, Josh, who is going to the Buffalo Sabres. So the Utah Mammoth are making this pick, and Blake, their celebrity guest picker is PGA Tour professional Tony Finau, who is from Salt Lake City, has a big presence there, comes from a big family, has a big family on his own. He's kind of the guy that whole state roots for on the PGA Tour week to week. And he is announcing the selection for the Mammoth, and it is Caleb Desnoyers, the center iceman with the Moncton Wildcats. This kid had a lot of helium late in the draft cycle because, his team advanced to the Memorial Cup, but also because the more scouts watched him, the more they saw a guy who was just so buttoned down. I'm going to use the term, Ray Ferraro be damned, 200-foot centerman, Blake. It's very overused, but this is a young man whose profile is all about being able to play a terrific two-way game. There are some Patrice Bergeron comparisons with this young man, and that is awfully high praise.
Yeah, skating is not his hallmark.
Like Patrice Bergeron.
Yeah. So, but you got to be that smart. So that's a big if. Are you smart enough to be this current pace that you're at and be in the right places at the right time? So, that's a courage of conviction. I mean, he was going to be a top draft pick, but to go this high for a player that isn't super pointsy and isn't super fast, that right. Goes. And I mean, he's big enough, but he's not filled out. He doesn't have that 200-pound build that we just talked about for Fondell. So, this is a player that it will need to develop before we see him as a Utah.
Yeah, and I saw Rich Nairn, the former PR man with the Arizona Coyotes, who did not accompany the team to Utah. I saw him tweet earlier in the day that he thought the ideal pick for this club was more of a scoring centerman to take some of that burden off of Logan Cooley and allow Barrett Hayton to play sort of the more traditional third line center role. Desnoyers, well, he could be that, but it may very well be that Utah is going forward now with a center group of Cooley having to be the 1C and drive the offense with some combination of Desnoyers and Hayton, who, of course, was also a high pick and a surprise pick ahead of Quinn Hughes that one year in Dallas, Blake. We should note, okay, they chose this two-way centerman who isn't the greatest of skaters over James Hagens, who would have been the consensus first overall at this time last year, over Brady Martin of the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. Martin has endeared himself to scouts because he's such a physical player, so in the mix. and a good two-way guy himself. They chose him over Jake O'Brien in Brantford, the OHL pivot who's got a lot of skill. They took him over Roger McQueen, the big Brandon centerman, who, if healthy, I think might have been selected already here. And they took him over the maybe one pure power forward, quintessential power forward, Porter Martone of Mississauga in the OHL. So this is quite a declaration from Bill Armstrong and the Utah staff there that they want this two-way center iceman as opposed to perhaps more offensively gifted players who I think will fall here in the next few
And he
picks.
must have been clearly their choice, because if you were even close to a tie, if you were close to the coin toss of Desnoyers and Hagens, wouldn't you go with Hagens, knowing you could do the NBA trade here and take Hagens? And if you keep Hagens, you keep Hagens. And if the Islanders continue to sweeten deal, maybe you'd be able to trade Hagens to the New York Islanders, who you know are hot and heavy for him. With reports saying that they had enlisted Matthew Darche to do whatever it takes to get Hagens. Literally that strong. So interesting they go that way.
Blake. Yeah, the owner is apparently quite fancies the idea of having a Long Island native, a kid who grew up rooting for the New York Islanders, on his team. And you're right. So far, neither of these teams has decided let's take Hagens and hold the Islanders ransom. We'll see if that's coming. Now, I doubt it's coming here with Barry Trotz because, number one, Nashville needs centers. Where have you heard that before? Nashville has forever needed centers. If they take Hagens, I think it's with the intent to keep him and play him. The other thing is Nashville is one of a few clubs who has 3 first-round picks here tonight. Nashville's selecting with pick number 5, which is their indigenous pick. They have pick number 23 from the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I believe that was the Tanner. Was that the Tanner Janot deal? I forget. Anyways, they have Tampa's pick number 23, and they have what's the third? Oh, and they have Vegas's pick number 26. So there was talk about Nashville. The 2 lower picks might be in play for a trade. In fact, that's also the case with Philadelphia, the other team with 3 picks. They have 22 and 31. But number 5 would be quite a surprise here. If the Islanders can get to 5, I think it's going to cost more than 16 and 17 to get 5. And even then, does Barry Trotz want then 4 first-round picks with none of them starting before number 16?
The teams that go back-to-back are interesting too, because, if you get, you talked about 16-17 for Montreal, but Pittsburgh going 11-12 is also interesting. If I'm going to guess Dubas wants quantity, not, necessarily take the risk on quality. But when you've got back-to-back picks, boy, that seems like you've got the ability to move as well. But I think Dubas knows that he's in a full rebuild. He is the only one that's advertised that. So getting 2 top 12 bodies is probably more up his alley.
Yeah, Pittsburgh 11 and 12, 12th overall. Of course, the Rangers pick. It once belonged to the Vancouver Canucks, but where they sent it to Pittsburgh.
And half the league.
In the Marcus Pettersson deal, and then the Islanders 16-17, those 2 picks that they acquired from the Montreal Canadiens. Philly at number 6. I wouldn't think they're going to want to do the New York Islanders a favor as a division rival. So who knows? Maybe Boston at 7, Seattle at 8, somewhere around there for the Islanders and Hagens. We shall see. Here's the other thing that we should talk about. There are some rumors out there that the Buffalo Sabres are interested in Pittsburgh winger Brian Rust. We had talked about Brian Rust as a potential Vancouver Canuck, Blake, because of the goal-scoring pedigree there, because, of course, the fact that Rutherford and Alvin got to know him so well in Pittsburgh, because he's available for futures, right? And we don't think there's a ton of those players out there right now, although this week has proven you still can get an NHL player for futures. So there is talk that Buffalo and Pittsburgh may do something with their first-round picks and that Brian Rust would be involved. Buffalo picking at number 9, Pittsburgh picking at number 11 and number 12. And I don't want to be alarmist here, but this wouldn't be the first draft we've done, partner, where we're anticipating a fair number of trades and then not a whole lot of trades go down.
It's also not the first draft that we've done.
It's too early.
It's also not the first draft that we've done that is now being forecasted to be an 11-hour first round. People are already rending their garments, to borrow a Tony Gallagher term. 4 picks in 50 minutes thus far.
It's a little sluggish, gentlemen.
Yeah.
A little sluggish. Let's get things going here, Gary. Let's move it along. And there you go. The pride of Sicamous, British Columbia, Shea Weber is the guest selector for the Nashville Predators. And they have selected Sault Ste. Marie center iceman Brady Martin, Blake. And this was a guy that looked more like a mid-first round pick prior to the end of the season. He really put on a show late in the year. And the one thing that stood out with him as more and more teams dug in and did their research was just how willing he is to be a physical player. He is highly noticeable on the ice. He hits everything that moves. He's in the middle of every scrum. He's not the most gifted guy offensively, although he does have some of that in his tool shed.
People like his playmaking.
Yeah, they like his playmaking, and they like the fact that he's a conscientious defensive player as well, who comes with a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And Blake, there is a situation with this young guy that I haven't come across in a long time. He decided not to attend the draft to help on the family farm.
Yeah, he's busy. Is
it calving season?
I think it might be. I think it might be. Who knows if they were able to pull him off of the back 40 to actually say a word here. This might be where the draft can pick up some time because Brady's not there. And you can bet there's a couple of Sutters that are at home right now looking at the TV
they
going,
approve.
It's good. We like the sound of that guy.
Viking Alberta approves of Brady Martin's choice to stay on the farm and help out as opposed to attend the draft. The other thing that I thought about when I heard this, Blake, was, okay, is this the agent saying, hey, Brady, tell NHL teams that you're not going to be able to travel to LA because you have chores, you have duties on the farm. You know, maybe that will make the difference between you and another guy as the scouts go, oh, look at that. He's a hard worker. You know, he's really got his priorities right. He's a good family man. He's helping out on the farm as opposed to putting the suit on and coming here to La La Land. So,
what would be the West Coast equivalent? Can't come. I'm on my family's fishing trawler and we're casting nets.
There you go. Yeah, it's crab season. It's crab season.
That would be good visuals.
I'm out crabbing.
Live hit via Starlink on the trawler in the middle of the Pacific.
It's salmon season. I'm sorry. I'm knee deep in waiter. Anyway, so we're 5 picks in, and no James Hagens, which I suspect is now going to become the big curiosity for everybody, right? Like, can the Islanders get into one of these next 5 picks and take James Hagens? Is Hagens going to fall so far that the Islanders can get him beyond 10? Is that pick?
But here's the thing:
is there a deal available there?
Like, you know, these teams like Philly wants an injection of young talent. Boston's cupboards are not terribly deep right now, given their decade of winning. Seattle, do they feel like they've satiated themselves enough? Like, is there an opportunity there? Seattle and Buffalo, they present some opportunities. Seattle and Buffalo might be in win now mode to the point where if Hagens can survive Philly and Boston so far, maybe there's some wheeling and dealing for the Islanders there at 8 and 9.
And you're going to have to help me out here, but I don't even see a lot of chatter from insiders about trades going on here.
Matt, it is absolute tumbleweeds.
Really quiet. Really quiet. Because, and we had Cam Robinson on the show a couple of days ago. He said, can't remember the last time this many first-round picks were available, that just about everybody was willing to trade their first-round pick for the right price. And yet, we sit here, you're following everybody. I guess a little harder to ascertain with the GMs squirreled away in their draft war rooms in their cities as opposed to right there on the floor in front of you, but it seems awfully quiet on the trade side here. Perhaps that's a function of, top 5 picks very rarely get moved, and that outside of Utah, nobody in that top 5 really had any kind of interest in moving out their pick. You do note Boston and Philly here. Maybe there's a little more interest with these next 5 teams to round out the top 10, but for another year when people predicted there could be fireworks at the draft, so far we have gotten the processional first round that we've become accustomed to in the NHL.
This is going against everything that we were told by the teams themselves. Oh, it'll be way more fun. There'll be way more wheeling and dealing if we can call each other privately and have these phone calls away from the prying eyes. More stuff will happen. Well, here we are, an hour into the draft, and not only is nothing consummated, again, the insiders aren't even tweeting, for God's sakes, Matt. Like, usually they will manufacture something. Somebody should just tweet out something, because right now it is a moonscape for insider information right now. I'm surprised nobody's saying, hey, I'm on the phone looking up something. Like, that tweet would do numbers if somebody just showed a pulse, but it's not happening.
Maybe it's, darkest before the light, quiet before the storm.
Yeah, maybe.
Calmest before the storm sort of theory prevails here. But the Philadelphia Flyers have made the 6th overall selection via Charles Barkley, one-time great Philadelphia 76er and noted hockey fan if you watch Inside the NBA. And they have selected the big power forward, Porter Martone, from the Mississauga
that
OHL. That
tracks, doesn't it? He would look good in orange.
You think Rick Tocchet's gonna like this guy?
Yeah.
He's I say, so there's a big Russian who has a lot of helium here because he attended that Dan Milstein Gold Star camp down in Florida last week or the week before, whenever it was. His name is Daniil Prokhorov. Teams didn't see a lot of him in Russia this year, but he showed well in that camp, and he's absolutely huge. Like, he's nearly 6'6" and 220 some pounds. So with apologies to him, who could also be a quote unquote power forward, Porter Martone figures as the quintessential and most likely to be your traditional NHL power forward. In fact, some teams, some lists have him as a top 3 pick because of the size. He's 6'3", he's more than 200 pounds, and because of the fact that he's got skill. He can play all sorts of games. He plays a physical game. He gets to the net front. He's got good hands. People are looking at this guy and they're dreaming on Todd Bertuzzi, Blake.
Yeah, and I don't blame him. I mean, this is a kid that plays with gusto and emotion and the size to back it up, and he could be a lot of fun to watch, and maybe in the not too distant future. I mean, that's the good news for Philly is, how much longer are they going to have to wait on Porter Martone with that size already? Not a lot of rookies are entrusted to play, bottom 6 minutes right off the get-go and sort of develop that way. But he might be one of those guys that they do feel okay putting him into the NHL lineup sooner rather than later, even if it's not in a scoring capacity, because he can do a lot of other things. So we'll see. But it seems like a pretty logical pick for the reputation of Philadelphia and for the new head coach that they brought in here as well.
Okay, nearly halfway to this Canucks pick. And Blake, let's play it out here. I haven't had this discussion, and again, we were so under the impression that Vancouver is going to trade their selection. That could still be the case, but let's have this discussion. Do you want best player available here? Do you think they need to take a forward? Where are you in terms of the Canucks?
I think those two things are pretty much the same except for Radim Murtka. So if somehow Murtka falls to 15, then we could reopen that discussion. Otherwise, I think it's best player available and forward is the same thing to me for the most part. So I think unless Murtka falls, I think I'm okay with just the best forward available because, the Canucks are so thin on that. The blue line looks pretty good, both at the pro level and at the AHL level right now. So I think you have to be blown away by a very unique circumstance like the towering Murtka. So in that sense, I think we're gonna have to see how everything falls into place here. But we're not quite at that stage. Remember when the pick started to get a little bit closer to Quinn Hughes, and even for Podkolzin, I remember doing the math. Like a few picks away, you're like, there's enough good players left here where Podkolzin could drop to 10, and he did. And certainly we knew what the final straw was here for Quinn Hughes to drop to the Vancouver Canucks as well. But I mean, still a ways away, but there's some talent now that is starting to drop here. We'll see.
It is one of the fascinations with this draft. Is anybody going to join Matthew Schaefer amongst the defensemen in terms of being selected in the top 10? You mentioned Murtka, the big Czech, 6'6" right shot defenseman with Seattle Thunderbirds. There's a couple of other defensemen here. One, Kashan Aitchison with the Barrie Colts. People love his physicality, his competitiveness. Really came on in this draft season as well in terms of scoring, scored 26 goals. And then the other one is a kid who plays here in the Western League, Jackson Smith with Tri-City. He's a big, long left shot defenseman with some puck skills as well. So those are the candidates to go top 10 or be amongst the defensemen that get selected in and around or before the Vancouver pick. The other thing that I'm watching now, Blake, I scribbled down a list of 14, 15 forwards. When we start talking tiers, people will quibble with you for all sorts of reasons because, yes, there are tiers within tiers. Is Schaefer in a tier of himself, or Schaefer, Misa in a tier? Is Fondell in that tier? But this first round looks like it's going to drop off in and around Vancouver's pick or right after Vancouver's pick. So these forwards, 5 of them are gone. Who's left? James Hagens from BC. We talked about him. Jake O'Brien from Brantford. He was a guy who really made a case for himself sort of towards the middle of the season. Started hopping up lists. McQueen with his back injury in Brandon, 6'5" and offensively gifted. The question there is the medicals. Can you trust him to stay healthy? Some teams would be scared off by Caden Lindstrom. You remember last year, Blake? He went, I believe, was 4th overall. Columbus didn't play much because of the back injury. We also go back to Nolan Patrick. Remember, Philadelphia took him 2nd overall, despite the fact there was some injury concern there, and he never amounted. So McQueen, Victor Eklund is a high-energy, pugnacious winger from also the Djurgårdens program in Sweden. Carter Bear down the I-5 here in Everett, a very competitive player in his own right. There's a question, can he play center there? Is he going to have to play on the wing? Braden Coots in Seattle. Mentioned I spent some time with some WHL players this week, Blake. They couldn't say enough about Brendan Coots. Some think there might not be enough offense there for him to be a top 2 center. Others think he just played on a terrible team. Seattle had been so good for so many years that they had lost so much talent, and he didn't have much to play with this year. Justin Carbonneau is known as one of the better offensive skill guys in this draft, and he's got pretty good size at 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds in the Quebec League. The effort level, the consistency maybe isn't always there. And then Cole Reshney of the Victoria Royals on his way to North Dakota. And we also mentioned Lyndon Lakovich from Kelowna, Moose Jaw would-be power forward, but teams want to see more physicality out of him. Those are sort of the forwards who are available. And, well, how about this?
You got to talk about who made the pick.
Boston selects James Hagens, the center from Boston College, the apple in the Islanders' eye. And so now it becomes a question of, can the Islanders trade enough to the Bruins to acquire him after selection? Who made the pick?
Adam Sandler dressed as Happy Gilmore with the Bruins jersey. Absolutely perfect.
Spot on. Yes.
Yeah. So,
and Sandler's from New Hampshire, right? So did he grow up a Bruins fan? I don't know the story. Is that why he was wearing the Happy Gilmore? Is that why he wore the Bruins sweater in Happy Gilmore?
I don't know.
I know he grew up in New Hampshire, so it could very well stand a reason. Okay, so here's a guy who would have been 1st overall and winds up going 7th overall a year later. It answers one of the big questions that we have about this draft, and that is, where is he going to go? Who's going to take him? And now the only other question is, can the Islanders get him? A crafty offensive player, probably more a play. You've seen him more than me. Probably more a playmaker than a goal scorer, Blake.
Yeah. Generally, he was the setup man for Yzerman in the U.S. national team at that age group going up, and he's not as flashy as some of the wingers that he's played with, but the playmaking is extraordinary. Like, he just quietly creates a scoring opportunity, and that's good. That's a pretty decent pick. Like, I think that's a pretty high skill pick. As I said, this guy's in the NHL for me. He will make it, and for the Boston College guy to end up with the Boston Bruins, there's a good story there. The Islanders were a really good story for Hagens, but there's a good story there for Hagens as well.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Boston is one of the teams we have some questions about. How are they going to operate going forward? They made some trades that looked rebuilding at the deadline. Remember when they moved Brandon Carlo to the Toronto Maple Leafs? So Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie, their centerman there, and particularly Geekie as an RFA. Is there any chance one of those guys shakes loose? I did see David Pagnotta of the fourth period say teams continue to call on Pavel Zacha. We had talked about both of those guys, Blake, in terms of the Vancouver Canucks and their need for a center iceman. So we'll see. It's been a little. And
Zacha's starting to age out of the next time the Bruins will be good, right? Like, Zacha's 28. Like, if you're looking towards sort of the Hagens era, now as long as you've got a guy like Pasternak, you're not giving up on the chance to win, I don't think. But ultimately, the next phase they're trying to bring in, can you afford to do that without Pavel Zacha? You probably can if you're the Boston Bruins, and of course you're going to get something back anyway. So Geekie's a little bit younger. Geekie, you probably hold on to because you can envision him being part of the next wave. But Zacha, he may be superfluous for the Bruins. We'll see.
A reminder, if you're on YouTube, that Super Chat button is available to you. If you have a question, something you'd want to bring up on the program, hit the Super Chat. Half proceeds going to the BC Mental Health Foundation. Blake's going to monitor and see if there's anything to bring to the fore there from you all. We are getting closer to the Vancouver Canucks pick. Let's maybe just run down what we plan to do here. But as we get closer to Vancouver at 15th overall, we shall be taking a small sponsors break. We will come back in time before the Canucks are on the clock. Shortly after the pick is made, or if there is a trade made, Jeff Patterson is going to join us. He is down at Rogers Arena right now. And yes, reporters are at least accustomed to covering drafts from team facilities over the years. And Cam Robinson, our weekly regular, the director of film scouting and content for Elite Prospects, is down there on site in Los Angeles. Cam, of course, does such great draft work. He will be joining us as well at some point after the Canucks make their selection or trade their pick. We will fire a Whistler Golf Club poll question once we have greater clarity on the Vancouver Canucks events and decisions here today. And
they just had technical difficulties interviewing Hagens in their little Zoom chat on stage.
Oh no!
And Haley Salvino of The Athletic saying all of this is just giving me COVID flashbacks that I don't appreciate. It does. It feels like it feels like social distancing is a thing still here.
Fair. No, absolutely. We remember that draft, right? We remember how all the leagues had to remember the NFL draft was remote. It was Roger Goodell from his basement. And then they had those great visuals of Bill Belichick at his kitchen table with the dog.
Which was a way shittier kitchen than I expected it to be. It looked like it was renovated in 1987. It was very odd.
Hey, Belichick. He wears cutoff hoodies. You think he gives a shit about the kitchen and how it looks?
It was immaculate, but it was renovated in 1987.
What's important there is the dog looked comfortable and it softens some of the Belichick edges, right? Oh, look at that. He's a dog lover, and the dog seems to like his company. Blake, and you're going to have to help me out here, but I continue to look for any kind of whisper from the dozens of NHL insiders that are out there about any kind of trade activity or any kind of discussions that are going on in this draft.
Can we get a wellness check on a bunch of guys in our orbit, please? Like, are you okay? Blink twice.
Exactly. Can Saravelli fog up a mirror right now? Somebody check on Frank.
I don't understand it, honestly. Like, for the sake of your own clicks, tweet the most benign thing in the world right now. It'll get tens of thousands of clicks because you're the only one doing it.
All right, the would-be rival Seattle Kraken are on the clock here. I got to say, Blake, sometimes our draft show gets a little squirrely. I think we've set a record here, pick 7, talking about Belichick and his dog and the lack of any kind of trade discussions. Let me ask you this. So the Islanders take Emil Heineman, pick 16 and 17 for Noah Dobson today from the Montreal Canadiens. Now, we were told that new GM Mathieu Darche didn't plan a rebuild. That is a big-time rebuild trade there. And Pinota has reported this from the fourth period. You see a trade like that, you're the Canucks. Do you not break off a call on Matt Barzal?
He did report that the Vancouver Canucks had broken off a call to the Islanders on Matthew Barzal. So, those dots connect, and by all accounts, it happened. And you would think the Canucks can explore that space just a little bit. And again, based on those prices, this would maybe be the best time ever to get Matthew Barzal, who, you might even get on even more of a discount given his recent injury problems as well. So, it's you hope they're doing the due diligence. And the problem, Matt, is there is a world in which I see the Canucks come away with nothing on the pro side of things today, that it's just a draft day for them, and that Patrick Allvin once again says the prices were just too high. And and I hope somebody in that room, if that happens, I hope somebody in the room says the prices were not high. What are you talking about?
Not based on this week. Not based on what we've seen this week. No. The Seattle Kraken have selected Jake O'Brien, the center iceman from Brantford in the OHL, with their selection. This is another guy who profiles as a number 2 NHL centerman. He may have a little bit more skill than Desnoyers and Brady Martin. People like him as a playmaker. He's not as physical as Martin is. Few are. But people like the offensive package here. 6'2", 170-some pounds, so he's going to have to hit the gym and get to the weight room. I don't think you're talking about a player for next year. There's still some physical maturity that has to happen here, but there have been some comparisons. 6'1.5", 177 pounds. There have been some comparisons to Wyatt Johnston here from Dallas that they think he's going to play that sort of game in the National Hockey League. And I think there's a pretty high floor on this player as well, because he's a two-way guy, and if he doesn't quite make it as a top 2 or top 6 scorer in the National Hockey League, top 2 center, top 6 forward, I do think you're going to see a guy who plays here in a bottom 6 role. So another forward off the board, and again, the draft of second-line centerman theme, I think, continues here from Los Angeles.
It's not time to trigger the Roger McQueen excitement if you're a Vancouver Canuck fan just yet. And I say that in particular because of the back-to-back Penguins picks coming up. And I think if you got back-to-back picks right now, and if Roger McQueen drops to 11 for the Penguins, you've got 2 picks. You make a safe pick, you make a risky pick. If I'm Kyle Dubas, and your risky one, not in terms of skill, but in terms of injury risk, is Roger McQueen, where the upside is tremendous for the kind of player that you get, and then whoever else is in your wheelhouse there that you also like. So I can't imagine Roger McQueen dipping below the Penguins back-to-back picks, and we'll see if he even survives to that point. But it's starting to get notable that Roger McQueen is still around right now.
Yeah, and like I said, and The Athletic did a very good piece on this, I want to say last week, it could have been this week, where their draft insiders spoke to a ton of scouts about McQueen. They talked to one scout who said he's amongst the best 2 or 3 players in the draft. I have him like rated as one of the number 2 or number 3.
Elite Prospects has him 5th
on
overall.
my list. Yeah, they talked to other scouts who said we have him on the do not draft list because we're not confident in his health going forward. So yeah, it's interesting. Anaheim could take a chance here at 10 on McQueen, Blake, because they've already got a pretty good stable of young forwards, and they're adding to it, and they're looking to step up, take bigger swings in free agency this year. I'd be surprised on Detroit. They could use the skill. Detroit tends to take safer players. Columbus with 2 picks, including 14 right ahead of Vancouver, I think could also take a chance on McQueen because of the draft capital they have available to them. Incidentally, Columbus finished as the runner-up on Noah Dobson. Did you see what? I was surprised by so many things with this Dobson trade. Number one, that the Islanders just wouldn't re-sign him. Like, I know he didn't have a good year last year. I know you have some qualms about him defensively, but he's an outstanding offensive defenseman, right shot, first pair guy. Like, that's amongst the scarcest commodities in the NHL. So I was surprised that he was in play to begin with. I was surprised he went for a guy who's probably just a bottom 6 forward and 2 mid-first rounders in a draft that isn't great. And then Aaron Portzline in Columbus said the Islanders asked for the 2 Blue Jackets first rounders, 14 and 20, a roster player, and Pinota said that was Dmitry Voronkov, who's pretty good young player, and another piece for Noah Dobson. So they settled for a Montreal offer that was 3 assets after asking Columbus for 4, including a better player.
But Columbus said no to that, presumably? Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah. So, I mean, that surprises me, though, that there wasn't another team involved willing to do more than the Montreal offer. Like Buffalo looking for a right shot defenseman, has Bowen Byram to train. Like, there are a ton of teams out there that are looking for the top 4 right shot defensemen, particularly the guy who can play on the power play and bring you offense. That I would have thought that the Islanders could do better than that. But, the returns haven't been over the top pricey this week.
No,
it has really been very strange in terms of the environment that we thought we were looking at or still are looking at, and what GMs selling good roster pieces have been willing to settle for.
Okay, so we've chronicled the lack of anything from the insiders. Are we going to talk about what we're hearing from the non-insiders? Matt, one of your dreams is reportedly going to happen. George Larocque, former National Hockey League player, is saying he's hearing, again, not an NHL insider per se, that Sidney Crosby is on his way somewhere.
Well, I take that with a shaker of salt.
A shaker, not a grain. A full shaker.
George has said some things.
A box of Windsor salt.
In the past. Yeah, exactly. George has said some things in the past. I've said it many, many times. Is Sidney Crosby really want to play out the rest of his NHL career with a decade of not being competitive? And I've just always thought that a shame. Like this, we saw him at the Four Nations. Like, this is a guy who deserves to play in high-stakes, big games.
And Matt,
this is a guy who's been awesome in those games when he's gotten a chance to play.
What team has cleared out a ton of room in the last 24 hours? The Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. Traded $8 million out the door today in Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood.
It seems very in line with the salary of one Sidney Crosby.
I believe it was 7.75, so I believe they're $1 million shy of the Sidney cap hit there. Blake. But
it's a delicious thought. It's a delicious thought.
And it's a delicious thought. And here's the thing. If it does go down, I think it'll be quiet until it's on the verge of happening, because I don't think NHL insiders ask a whole lot about that, because I think they're just maybe in some cases too polite, or don't want to be seen as muckrakers on a Sidney Crosby story. But if you were to tell me that Sidney Crosby went to the managers there in Pittsburgh, Kyle Dubas, and said, look, there's a few markets I'd be willing to go to if you guys are inclined, if they meet your price, I'd be willing to go somewhere.
Matt, there might be one market. It might be that market.
It might
just
be
Nathan
Colorado
McKinnon's market.
Nathan McKinnon. I would like to think this market means something to him, his single greatest moment as a hockey player here in this town. But with managers he knows too, Sidney.
Yeah, that's true too.
Mm-hmm. But no, I've always been a little bit skeptical that, being a career Penguin is that meaningful. First of all, Mario already beat you to that punch and went on to own the franchise, may own it again if some of the reports are true. And secondly, so many other great players have played for multiple franchises, including Wayne Gretzky, including Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, all of them. So, I didn't necessarily, it is by no means a stain on his legacy if he wants to go somewhere else, even if he asks for a trade, because he just doesn't want to deal with the rebuild there in Pittsburgh. So, anyways, we'll keep tabs on that. Radim Murka, the big Seattle Thunderbirds right shot defenseman, goes to the Buffalo Sabres at number 9 overall. So there you go. We do have 2 defensemen at minimum in the top 10. We should also spend a minute on that Seattle pick of Jake O'Brien, Blake, because this is a matter that we have disagreed on in the past on the show. I kind of like the Seattle depth of forward and think that they could be competitive for a playoff spot as soon as this year, particularly if what we saw from Shane Wright late in the year tracks and he continues to improve. I understand that Matty Beniers may not be the elite number 1 centerman we thought he would be or could be. But that's another center iceman they just took. In a few years here, this could be Beniers, Shane Wright, Jake O'Brien down the middle. And that sounds like it could be, enough good second line centers to compensate for the fact that you may not have that pure number 1 center.
I think they're flooding the position because there's a couple of, question marks around some of those players, in terms of exactly how elite, who's the number 1 center in that group? Or do they have a bunch of number 2s? So I think that's what
I think for the moment it's Beniers, but I wouldn't be surprised if
he's a number 1 center, the way he's tracking right now, he looks like he would be a lower end first line center. But
yes.
But a very nice second line center. So
agreed.
But as we've seen with Florida, right? Having 3 second line centers or something close to that, that's a pretty good model as well. So
yeah, Barkov may not be the quintessential first line center in terms of his offensive output, but by God, after 2 cups and what he does all 200 feet of the ice, I think you have to consider him a number 1 center now, even if he's not the purest of number 1 center profile. So Anaheim is on the clock here at pick number 10, and if they make the selection, Blake, there will not be a single traded pick in the top 10, despite all the scuttlebutt leading up to this draft being so many picks were in play, so many picks that aren't normally in play, top 10 picks. We talked about a couple of years ago how few actual top 10 picks get traded in the National Hockey League these days.
But it might be counterintuitive there, Matt. They're worth... and I'm exaggerating for the point. They're worth so little, we can't trade them. Rather than they're worth so little, I want to get rid of it. They're worth so little, I can't trade it.
It does take 2 to tango. You could have a number of teams going, I'm just not willing to meet the price for that guy, because in other years, number 7 or number 8 or number 4, whatever the case may be, gets me a top pair defenseman or a top line forward. Whereas in this class, that's a second. I'm hopeful it's a second line player. I'm hopeful it's a second pair defenseman. Not worth their while. Continues to be exceedingly quiet on the trade front. No, just checking in here. Is there any news breaking here outside of George Laraque? Nope. No, as a matter of fact, the pick is in for Anaheim, so that's that. No trades in the top 10 at all.
Rob Rossi commenting on the Crosby rumors. He says he just spoke with somebody who would know, cough, cough. I'm guessing that's Mario. Anything you read this weekend about Sidney Crosby leaving the Penguins, in the words of this person, is quote unquote a joke. And this person of all persons would know he'd know before anybody. Maybe it's Crosby himself he's talking about.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Long-standing reporter there in town may very well have a line to Sidney Crosby. Okay, so with this Anaheim pick in, we are getting closer and closer and creeping to the Vancouver Canucks selection at number 15. And Blake, given the evidence at hand, if they're still trying to move this pick, I don't like their chances at this stage of the proceedings.
No. Somebody's going to break the ceiling, though, isn't it? With no trades yet, somebody's going to make this deal. But we'll see when that comes about. Pittsburgh with back-to-backs, but again, they're the one team that is rebuilding, so that makes sense for them to hold on to both of theirs. It's very peculiar.
It is very peculiar. And look, the other thing that's happening here is that the center ice options are falling off the board for the Vancouver Canucks. We noted some of the trade activity before today on our daily show about pieces that could have been the Vancouver Canucks. They had an eye for Matt Duchene in free agency. He re-signed. Today, and I don't know if Charlie Coyle was a guy that they were looking at. I don't know if he was quite high-end enough, good enough to be able to fill in that top two center role. But Charlie Coyle is now on the move. He was traded from the Colorado Avalanche to the Columbus Blue Jackets today as part of a 3-player, 5-asset deal where Colorado cleared out some cap space. John Tavares re-signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs on a team-friendly deal over 4 years. We had wondered a little bit about Tavares because all the reporting out of Toronto was that he and the Leafs were very far apart and that maybe there was a world where the Leafs had leaned on his Toronto loyalties, pissed him off, and maybe got him to July 1st. But that is not the case either. We have seen other center icemen moved. And if you're the Vancouver Canucks, your options are getting pretty limited here in terms of who makes sense for you, who can fill that top two center void.
Yeah, if it's a center, it's getting thin.
Are we getting down to Michael Granlund, Blake? Are we getting to the point where they're going to have to get into a bidding war for Michael Granlund because he is the best free agent center iceman available who would consider coming to Vancouver?
Or is it recycled season? We already saw reports that Brock Besser has been called again by the Canucks. Do they just go back to the devil they know in Pius Suter and say, he's cheaper, he's younger than Granlund, and we could probably get the same return? Who knows? But the Ducks pick is in, and my bell of the ball is out.
Yes, it is Roger McQueen, the Brandon Wheat Kings center iceman. This is a kid who played very little hockey this year. He missed most of the season. And that has affected his draft stock here because if he plays this year, he is almost certainly a top 5 pick and goes ahead of some of these center icemen who have beaten him to the punch. Went to the combine, measured 6'5.25", 198 pounds, and that is with good skill. This isn't just a big center iceman who can get to tough, who can get to tough areas, score rebound, tip-ins, net front, dirty area type goals. This is a guy who can carry the puck and has some skill. I mean, he is dwarfing the people on stage, Blake, and the selection was made here by a couple of the actors who starred in the Mighty Ducks movie from years ago as children. Joshua Jackson.
Yep.
He's a BC guy, isn't he?
He's a Canadian for sure. Yeah.
So anyways, some fun and hilarity ensuing there with those two back in those Anaheim Mighty Ducks sweaters, because that's the Mighty Ducks sweater they brought back. And we mentioned that Anaheim has this nice cache of young forwards, so much so they were able to trade one, Trevor Zegras, who wasn't working out there. They got Mace McTavish, Leo Carlson there, plus some pretty good wingers. So they are capable of taking a swing on McQueen and his health. And if it doesn't work out, okay, doesn't work out for them. They have other young forwards. They have cap space. They finally have a budget there. That's the other thing. Anaheim was not always a team that spent to the cap, but that is changing. Henry Samueli, the owner there, made that clear when they started when they announced their plans to develop further around the rink there in Anaheim. And they got a guy who, if he works out, could very well, if he's healthy and realizes his potential, could very well look like the steal of this draft. And another forward, another center goes off the board here.
And it's looking pretty chalky as a group. Maybe not slotting chalk, but it's in terms of the skaters, like who's a faller right now? The only guy that I could say that is qualifying or showing signs of being a faller might be Victor Eklund, who is, as they look at elite prospects, they show where everybody has ranked them, and he's got a lot of top 10 rankings. And so as we leave the top 10, a guy that was 6 by Recruits, 8 by Sportsnet Books, 8 by Dauber, 5th by Smart Scouting, 9th by Elite Prospects, 10th by McKenzie and Button. So Eklund is maybe the only guy that seems to be a consensus faller-ish, but if it is, it's only by a couple spots for now.
And I think that was a little predictable because he's a small winger in a draft filled with center icemen.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to take the center over the winger each and every time. Now, I say small. He's 160-some pounds. He is 5'11", though, so he has some room.
Yeah, he's not micro.
To put it. Yeah, 169 pounds. He weighed in at the combine at 5'11". He plays a feisty, rambunctious game. Think Nils Höglander here in terms of his ability and his desire to, play on the inside, play with passion and compete level.
Good motor.
Good motor and some pretty good skill here as well.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of size there. And so that's going to push you down when you're up against, again, centers that do have size or have more size than you. This is also a right shot winger, Blake, and teams do they're a little harder to find in terms of the right shots who can score. So I anticipate he'll be gone here in the next few picks. Do I think he could be a Vancouver Canuck at 15th overall? Yeah, I could see that. I don't think the Canucks, remember the last time they had a first round pick, Tom Wielander, everybody seemed to think that they were very targeted on a right shot defenseman. Mm-hmm. And because it was a huge missing ingredient in the organization. And when they took Wielander, a lot of evaluators said, they took that guy because he's a right shot defenseman, that guy probably wouldn't have gone quite that high, but you had a team that was hell-bent on filling an organizational need. I'm not sure the Vancouver Canucks are in that boat here, Blake. I could see a world where they are purely best player available here and not discriminating positionally whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't feel that either. I think if they love a player regardless of position, I think that's who's going to be the Canucks pick. At this point, Matt, with the trade looking less and less likely, I'm happy for the scouts. Let's raise a glass to the Canucks scouts who will actually get to use their expertise, because for so long here, weeks, months even, we were pretty sure that all of their binders were going to get tossed into recycling and none of it would be of any use. But it looks like it's going to get used.
All right, so let's go through the candidates here. On the forward side, we just talked about Victor Eklund, the Swedish winger from Djurgårdens. Carter Bear from Everett, kind of hybrid forward. Can he play center ice in the National Hockey League, or is he going to have to be on the wing? People love his motor and compete as well. The skill, the skill maybe is not high end. You may be looking at a guy who you're hoping to be more in the 50 to 60 point range in the National Hockey League, but a guy who can play in all situations, a valuable piece who fits into either your top six or your middle six. Braden Coots, the Seattle center iceman. In some cases, some rankings have him as clearly a top 15 guy. The Hockey News has him as 13th overall. He plays penalty kill. He plays power play, complete player. The WHL players I was talking with this week said just a really smart player who's got offensive tools. Is he going to top out as a third-line center in the NHL, or does he have enough skill to be a top two center? Is the question on Coots. Justin Carbonneau of
This
Blainville.
Is an interesting one for me here.
Well, he's interesting, and we had a good discussion with Cam Robinson last week on Carbonneau. One of the more skilled players in the draft, one of the better shots in the draft, 6'1" and a quarter, 205 pounds.
Matt,
so what's missing? The consistency night tonight, and will he be a two-way player in the National Hockey League, or are we just talking about a guy who's going to have to be sheltered into offensive zone, offensive line mate minutes because he's not a factor and can be taken advantage of defensively?
Not an electric skater either.
That's correct. That's correct.
But great hands. Great. So here's what I would say about this player who seems to have top end skill, like upside. People say the upside here is pretty high. If you think you're going to have to trade Jonathan Lekkerimäki sometime in the next 72 hours or even in the next 12 months to get a roster player in the future, this is your insurance plan against that.
Well, so much so, Blake, too, that, the other thing scouts laud on him is the offensive instincts. This is a guy who thinks the game, knows where to be, sees 2 to 3 moves ahead. That's one of his special skills here. That's part of his secret sauce in terms of how he's
And Matt, outside of Lekkerimäki, who's got that on the Vancouver Canucks?
I was just going to say, Blake, in terms of the Vancouver Canucks wingers, who is that guy? I'm not sure they have one outside of Lekkerimäki.
No, they got greasy players, the Linus Karlssons, Ratu to some degree, but pure, unadulterated skill, it is Lekkerimäki and him only.
Yeah. Here we go. This is quite a surprise, and we have our first British Columbian selected here. Benjamin Kindle from Burnaby. Blake played at the Burnaby Winter Club. You've mentioned both his parents were professional soccer players. Burnaby Winter Club kid, Yale hockey kid. Went to the Calgary Hitmen in the WHL. He had 99 points this year, 35 goals. He isn't the biggest fellow, and that is, I think, one of the reasons why we're a little surprised here. 5'10" and a quarter, 180 pounds, and yet the Pittsburgh Penguins have just made him the 11th selection, the first of 2 consecutive picks for the Penguins, if they keep them both and make both. I saw most of the public lists thought that, and mocks thought Kindle would factor maybe around the Canucks pick at 15. It's one of the names that people wondered would the Canucks.
The elite prospect range is 18 to 23.
Right.
So this is reachy. This is reachy.
This is a lot higher than I think a lot of people anticipated. Now, good offensive player. This is a guy who understands where he needs to be and also plays a game that compensates for the limitations on the size end of things. He's pretty nifty with the puck. He's a right shot as well. Good hands, good stick handler. Probably isn't going to factor as a center iceman in the NHL at 180 pounds, but maybe there's the possibility there.
Well, Matt, we do have a trade coming up here too.
Oh, yay, please.
It sounds like a pick swap, but it's something. It's movement. It's lubrication in the gears, perhaps. It sounds like Pittsburgh is trading away this second in a row pick here coming up.
So number 12. Yeah. Pittsburgh's going to trade number 12. It's funny because, Eklund, Bear, Coots, Carbonneau, Reshny, Lakovic, the other British Columbian. There was a world, I think, where a lot of people thought those guys would go before Kindle goes, but here he is.
So who's in love with somebody so much that they wanted to trade up and grab him? That's going to be the interesting thing. Whoever picks it 12, who are they in love with?
So you wonder if it's one of the defensemen. Aitchison out of Barrie in the OHL. I can see scouts loving him because he's physical, he's mean, so much so that the knock there, or the question is, can he just stay out of the penalty box? In the NHL, he has some offensive tools and pretty good size, so I can see somebody falling in love with Aitchison and also Jackson Smith, because you have a sort of big, smooth skating defenseman. He's left shot, so I
some had
wonder,
Jackson Smith ranked quite high, so he might be in the category of a faller at this point.
Yep. So the two defensemen, Eklund, maybe Carbonneau, because of what we just talked about.
Here we go.
Maybe
it's a
Coots.
Pennsylvania trade, Matt. It's Philadelphia now in the 12th spot. They're 22nd and they're 31st going to Pittsburgh, who will now at the end of the day have 3 picks of their own instead of the cross-state rivals. Cross-Commonwealth rivals, if we're going to be politically correct.
If we're going to be, if we're going to be technically accurate. And, of course, Pittsburgh is looking to add assets.
That's right.
Period.
So that tracks a little bit, although you'd think you'd be pretty, I don't know, you'd think the higher end prospect rather than the 22 and 31, although is that ultimately what we're going to take away from this first round, is that not much separates 12 from 22 at this point, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that we should talk about, especially having just seen our first British Columbian of the night off the board, those teams with 3 first-round picks, so it was Philly, it's now Pittsburgh, Nashville as well. Is that one of the spots for Joshua Ravensbergen, the big goaltender from the Prince George Cougars, right?
Yep.
You tend to see teams that have multiple first-round picks go a little earlier on the goaltender because they have the draft.
That's right.
Capital. They'll walk away from the draft with a defenseman and a forward and a goaltender, with some of these cases, maybe with 2 forwards or a defenseman forward and a goaltender. So I would now look at Pittsburgh in terms of a Ravensbergen fit. Could still well be Philadelphia because they have another pick. Do they? No, they traded both of them. Could well still be Nashville. We know that Barry Trotz, and they have gone goaltender in the past, Askarov, before they traded him to San Jose. So does one of the teams with multiple first-round picks wind up with the big British Columbian goaltender? That could be Columbus too, Blake. They're here at 14 and 20. Islanders at 16 and 17. Calgary at 18 and 32. San Jose has another pick in the first round with pick 30. Chicago has another pick in the first round at number 25. So there's still a number of teams out there that are going to be on the clock with their second, or in some cases third, first-round pick.
3 picks to go to Vancouver. We talked about the not diminutive wingers, but smaller, non-power wingers in Carbonneau and Eklund. I mean, odds are now looking pretty decent that one of those could be available to Vancouver with only 3 picks left to go here.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to bring it down to Eklund, Bear, Coots, Carbonneau, 3 picks left till Vancouver, one of those guys is available.
Yeah.
And maybe multiple are if a couple of these defensemen go in Jackson Smith and or Kayshawn.
But pure centers, that's probably just Coots. So if we see Coots, it might be a priority on the center ice position.
Yep.
If we're looking at pure skill, it's probably an Eklund or Carbonneau factor that tips the scales. So we'll see. And Bear, as we say, love the motor, but I think Bear's a tweener for me. Like, there's not enough that he does elite that gets me excited if I'm the Canucks.
I think Bear is a high floor, lower ceiling type
That's
guy.
Right. Yeah.
He will win you over with effort. He will win you over with competitiveness. He could fit and maybe, help you out at center, be a hybrid, play the wing,
which is an interesting existential question here, Matt, in this draft is now at this stage, now that we're away from the Misas and all that sort of stuff at the very top and Schaefer's,
Yep.
We've asked this question before. Usually it's farther down in the draft, but does it rise up now? Are you at the stage of, I'm going to shoot for the highest ceiling? Or do you shoot for the more likely to play NHL games guy at this stage in the proceedings?
There are some who believe that you should shoot for the ceilings, take the swings on upside all the time. Like that should be built in as a best practice in your philosophy at the draft. In other cases, you do have general managers who take. Steve Yzerman has received a lot of criticism for his drafting with the Detroit Red Wings in terms of they have mostly taken safer players that do project as NHLers, as opposed to guys who might be a little bit more dynamic, might have more flaws, or a little less likely to get there through their late teen years and early 20s.
Farhan Lalji reporting he does not expect the Canucks to trade their pick. So just in case you were wondering if there was something last second coming in, according to Farhan, that does not look likely to happen. A quick skim of the chat as we brought up all this stuff. Chris in the chat, I don't care if the player's big or small, BPA always. We've seen smaller players like the guy in Montreal do very well. Others saying, Brandon, I do not like Carbonneau from what I've seen. Somebody else above saying, if we get Eklund, I would be ecstatic. So there's, there we go. Brandon saying, if we get Eklund, I'd be so happy. So people divided as to what direction the Canucks will go, but we're getting awfully close here at this point.
Yeah, and another bit of a surprise here. Philadelphia trades up for Jack Nesbitt, who is a big center iceman from the Windsor Spitfires. He's 6'4" now. Our friend Cam Robinson did not particularly like this player when we asked him about him last week. He's big. He's a two-way centerman, and people think he's going to be able to help you out offensively, scoring short area goals. He's not much of a distributor, and for some, the skating has miles to go. I believe Cam called him a robotic skater. It's apparently improved, and you can't teach 6'4" and nearly 200 pounds. This looks like a Talkit style player, Blake. You know, a guy who's he can program into playing a north-south game.
The folks at Elite Prospects were not, and I mean the group of them were not impressed by Nesbitt. They had him ranged from 33rd to 65th, although they admit in the write-up somebody will grab him in the first round. So the size may be just too tantalizing for somebody is what they were thinking. And ultimately, we know Philly's trying to rebirth themselves into the Broad Street Bullies to some degree here.
Yeah, that's the other issue. Some want him to play more physical, given that he is 6'4" and a half, 186 pounds. But what we said off the top of the show, Blake, is you have enough warts on the forwards available in this crop that you could see some teams just trusting their scouts, trusting lists, and taking guys that may not be ranked as high on the public lists and the consensus lists that are out there over guys who are, because there's enough deficiencies in just about anyone you're going to take here, and some teams are going to prioritize others. In some cases, you may be talking about kids who really knocked socks off in terms of their interviews with different clubs at the draft combine in Buffalo. So both Kindle and Nesbitt, you don't have to look too far to see them ranked quite a bit below a number of forwards who are still out there. And I would suspect that you've probably got some scouts in the Canucks draft room right now who are pretty excited about who's going to be available with two somewhat surprising picks at 11 and 12. We're pretty excited with who's going to be available at number 15. Okay, we are going to take a short break here because we want to get back in time for the Vancouver Canucks selection. So Blake and I will be back in a moment. Cam Robinson from Los Angeles, Jeff Patterson from Rogers Arena coming up as the Vancouver Canucks are now minutes away from making their first-round selection or trading the pick. Sekeres and Price for Friday, June 27th, 2025. Coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres, virtually alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches and conducting things. We have just finished our live stream from the National Hockey League, or on the National Hockey League entry draft. It is proceeded through 12-13 picks here in the first round, and we join you here and now on the podcast side as we prepare for the Vancouver Canucks first round selection at number 15 overall. There is scant little time now, Blake Price, for the Canucks to trade this pick that everybody and their dog thought would be traded when the season ended.
You did, Blake.
I am having trouble hearing Blake, so let me just jump in here and see if he can get his audio issues corrected. Blake's in Toronto this week. He's got some Sports Center duties if you happen to be watching the highlights over the course of the weekend. So we have just come off a couple of, reasonably surprising picks. Benjamin Kindle of Burnaby goes 11th overall to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, a lot of people out there thought that Kindle, whose parents played for the Whitecaps, would be a first-round selection tonight, that he had a terrific junior hockey career with the Calgary Hitmen. It's just nobody, very few, I think, would have expected he would have gone 11th overall, and particularly with some of these forwards that are still on the board. That was the first surprise at number 11. Then the surprise at number 12. The Penguins trade that pick with their cross-Commonwealth rivals, the Philadelphia Flyers. Rick talking to the Philadelphia Flyers, trade their 22nd overall and pick 31 overall, both in the first round, to move up the 10 spots with Pittsburgh, and they select Jack Nesbitt, who's a big center with the Windsor Spitfires. Nesbitt, like Kindle, a lot of people thought, yeah, he would go in the first round, but probably closer to 20, 25, somewhere in that range. So we've got a couple of forwards here who have outperformed their position on the consensus boards and the public lists, and that has created a pretty interesting situation for the Vancouver Canucks coming down to pick 15. There are a number of forwards who I suspect the old adage, we couldn't believe he was there, would apply to. Whether that's Djurgården's winger Victor Eklund out of Sweden, whether that's Everett Silvertips forward Carter Bear, whether that's Braden Coots, the Seattle Thunderbird centerman, and probably the best pure centerman available here, whether that's Justin Carbonneau, the big scoring winger from the Quebec League, whether that's Cole Reshny from across the Georgia Strait with the Victoria Royals, where he had a terrific second half of the season last year. There's also a couple of defensemen that are still on the board in Jackson Smith, the Western Hockey Leaguer, a big smooth skating lefty, and Keishon Aitchison, a very hard-hitting, competitive, and in the mix defenseman for the Barrie Colts in the Ontario Hockey League. Do we have Blake back?
I hope so.
Yes, there you are.
But you don't have Carter Bear available to the Vancouver Canucks.
He's now gone, 13th overall to Detroit.
Yeah, so Canucks waiting on these final few moments here to piggyback on what has been a mildly busy week with the acquisition of Evander Kane, the signing of Conor Garland this week, today, and yet I think the lack of this trade, Matt, I think is probably going to disappoint some people. I think people saw this draft pick as an avenue to a second line center. And it's not to say that a second line center still isn't possible for the Vancouver Canucks, because maybe, and I throw this out just as an example, maybe Bill Guerin would rather Lekramaki and Dakota Joshua than a 15th overall and Dakota Joshua. Maybe that sounds a little bit closer to competing for him. Who's to know? But I can understand that some people are a little bit disappointed that we're in this place here where the Canucks are actually using this draft pick. But it doesn't mean that a trade still isn't in the offing here over the course of the next 3 days.
Well, you say there will be some who are disappointed, and I would imagine some of the disappointed will be at Rogers Arena right now in their draft room, thinking that they would be able to use this 15th overall to go out and get that top two center they so need. But I think there's also going to be a lot of people who are quite happy the Canucks used this pick. The draftists, the rebuildists, those who say, how many picks and prospects are we going to trade out with this organization, especially if it's just in the name of trying to make the playoffs and not build a championship club. And I suspect you'll have a lot more of those people, or some people who have come on board to that side, because of the quality of player who's going to be available to them here. I would have thought there was a world where they didn't think Victor Eklund would be there at 15. They didn't think Coots or Carbonneau or Smith or Aitchison, the defense, weren't there at 15. So there are some attractive prospects here. There are some attractive prospects that were way higher than number 15 overall on a lot of the public lists. And I think while there might be many disappointed that the Canucks have thus far failed to land that second line center they so desperately need, I think some will take longer range, bigger picture views in terms of adding a young, cheap, controllable player here at 15th overall.
Matt, do they owe it to themselves? And no one wants to hear talk like this, but do they need Quinn Hughes insurance with Jackson Smith available here potentially for the Canucks at 15?
Look, Aitchison and Jackson Smith, they are both left shot defensemen, different profiles of guy. Jackson Smith is more defense first, but he's not inept with the puck, and he's a very good skater. Aitchison is more physical. He's got a great shot. He'll be more of a goal scorer. Anyways, this is an interesting predicament, especially with the draft, Blake, that thus far has seen zero trades when it comes to picks for roster players. We saw one earlier today when Noah Dobson was traded from the Islanders to the Canadiens for 2 first-round picks, 16 and 17. We anticipated, given all the activity and all the reports that were out there, that we would see picks for player trades here in this first round. And, of course, we could still see that. It's not even half over. But thus far, there has been nobody willing to give up a player for a pick here from the floor in Los Angeles.
And it sounds like it's going to be Kashan Aitchison at number 14. So
for Columbus.
So if that's the case, then there's still a lot of options here for the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, Aitchison was a guy in the middle of this first round, but it's not. This is high for Kashan Aitchison based on a lot of the numbers that I'm looking at in terms of his projections. It's not exceedingly high. We're not talking 10 spots above, but this was about as high as I think most people thought Kashan Aitchison could get picked. So I would think the Vancouver Canucks feel like they're in a pretty good spot right now here.
Yeah, he had helium. He's a very charismatic young man, and so I think he won some people over at the at the Combine. Also, a physical defenseman, 6'1", 200 pounds, with a great shot. There's a lot to like there. Let's bring in Jeff Patterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of Rink Wide Vancouver. He is down at Rogers Arena following the proceedings. Jeff, thanks for joining. Just first and foremost, what has struck you here as we near the Canucks pick at number 15?
The fact that we're still waiting for the Vancouver Canucks to make a pick. This thing has dragged along. And I think in years gone by, we forget the first round generally takes about 3 hours. This one is on pace to be longer than that. And you know what? I said on X, like visually, I think there's a lot to like in the presentation of this draft. The Zoom room thing has to go. And then the secondary interview right after the Zoom room. So there's some clunkiness to it. I'm not huge on the celebrities, but I get it. Showbiz, and they're trying to spruce it up a little bit. But through all of that, the fact that there have been very few surprises and very few trades, I guess, to this stage of the proceedings is sort of the overwhelming sentiment that for the most part it has gone according to a lot of people's forms. After about the fifth pick, you can start to quibble with some of the projections that are out there. But Ben Kindle going where he went is a cool local story, obviously, having all of us covered his parents. But that one maybe is a surprise so far through the first 14 picks of this draft. So, yeah, I mean, we were expecting some fireworks, a lot of talk about teams looking to trade and trade down in the draft, whatever the case. I haven't seen a lot of that. And now we shall see. After months and months and look, I was firmly in the camp that thought there was no chance the Canucks would use 15 on this night. It looks and feels like they're going to step to their virtual podium at the very least and make the pick.
Do you think they will have cover in terms of explaining using this pick, Jeff, because of the fact that so few picks have been moved, and particularly moved for roster players?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it sounds like they have been in and active on a lot of phone calls, but haven't been able to consummate any deals yet. And just because it doesn't happen, look, JT Miller was traded before things got underway on the second day of the draft in 2019 here in Vancouver. So, if the Canucks use their pick tonight, it doesn't mean that they can't still be active on the trade front tomorrow or the day after that. We see lots of times as well that in previous years with previous draft configurations where a lot of the groundwork was laid on the draft floor, teams would head back to their war rooms, and a couple days after the draft, maybe you would see a trade come down the pipe that way. So if you're one that's waiting for the Canucks to make a trade, don't lose all hope if it doesn't happen this evening. But I think I will be surprised. I'm not going to be surprised now, but I think I am surprised that it's come to this, that they will use this 15th overall selection.
And everybody in the NHL, Jeff, seems to think that they are close to winning. With the boost in the salary cap, it just feels like everybody's got this misunderstood value of their own roster. I wonder if further along prospects are worth more to teams, Lekramacki's and Wielanders. If we're going to look at what assets they could use to find a center, maybe those are worth more than the pick right now.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that we really haven't seen or heard the fallout from the Minnesota deal, where it sounded like the Canucks offered 15 plus, and nobody seems to know what the plus was, but it wasn't enough, obviously, to get the interest of the Minnesota Wild to sign off on that deal. And again, and I said to you guys when I was on last week, I think that doesn't mean that trade is necessarily dead and buried. It's just that the first foray for the Canucks wasn't to Minnesota's liking. So you're right, and maybe Minnesota wanted to get through the draft weekend here and sort of see how the chips fall and take stock of where they are and where some of the other teams that they're battling with, and then maybe they circle back with the Vancouver Canucks. So, I mean, there's been so much talk, and the Canucks have been linked to Marco Rossi for so long. Again, I'm not prepared to throw that out of the window entirely at this juncture, but we shall see. And look, maybe the Canucks make a pick here with a player that turns out to be, maybe they don't trade the pick itself, but maybe the player that they get could be peddled. We certainly have seen that in all sports. After the fact, you include that player in a package of some sort. So, again, lots of moving parts here, but the end result, and I know we're doing this in real time, I'm sort of looking off to the side to keep an eye on the TV screen here at Rogers Arena. Canucks are next up. They're on the clock here.
The Canucks are on the clock. It's Jackson Smith, the big left shot defenseman from Tri-City in the Western Hockey League, who goes 14th overall to Columbus. So, Blake, they do go defenseman. They just don't go Aitchison.
Not Aitchison,
Smith. So Aitchison's available here for the Canucks. Let's run down the rest of the list. I think there will be many who are stunned that Victor Eklund is still on this board. The smaller, pugnacious Swedish winger from Djurgårdens. Braden Coots, probably the best centerman available right now with the Seattle Thunderbirds. Does he have enough offensive upside to be a second-line center in the NHL, or are you just going to get a very good third-line center? Didn't play with great talent this year. Those who like him love him, think he's a highly intelligent player with a two-way game who's got enough skill to hang in an NHL top six. Justin Carbonneau, the nearly 6'2", 200-plus pound winger from the Quebec League, who's got one of the better shots, some of the best skill in this draft. There's some skating concerns there. And then there's Cole Reshny, who everybody likes as a smart forward. There is some talk about whether the former Victoria Royal is going to be able to hang at center ice in the National Hockey League. He's a smaller or lighter guy, but everybody suspects you're getting a pretty useful middle six forward there. Pride of Kelowna, Lyndon Lakovic, who's a 6'4" would-be power forward from Moose Jaw. I say that because every write-up I read about him is that the kid needs to use his size and be more physical, that he's got the makings of a power forward game. He just thus far hasn't played physically enough to profile as that in the National Hockey League. So those are the players available to you. Of course, they could go with somebody else. We've already seen a couple of big surprises here. Guys, I'd be really interested to know, is the phone lighting up in Bill Guerin's office right now going, okay, Bill, here you go, last and best, 15th overall plus whomever for Marco Rossi.
Well, especially because you have some names that have slid here a little bit, right? Just in case. Now, what are the chances the guy who's trying to unload the small center is interested in a slightly undersized winger? But I mean, a guy like Aitchison, we'll see. I don't know that at this late stage it's likely. But
it is former Canuck Director of Amateur Scouting Judd Brackett making the calls there, right, for who they select. And we know Judd has had great success there. Sorry, Jeff.
Well, I was just saying, in any other year, if I'm the Vancouver Canucks and you get to this stage, I am bolting to my Zoom screen or however they're doing the selections and taking Keishon Aitchison. Like I love the idea of that player, and I think Canuck fans would love that player, but this is a team that is in such dear need for offensive upside now and to stock the cupboards as well. So I don't think that this is the year to be going defenseman, but I just like so much about that player. And Blake, we had a good chat with Cam Robinson the other day when Matt was off, talking again about the attributes of Aitchison, who can beat you in a bunch of different ways. I think I'm fascinated to see here, and we won't have to wait long. If the Canucks do use the pick, in some ways, guys, I think this is going to be really telling. Because Eklund is still on the board, there is a strong possibility that for a fourth straight year under Patrick Allvin, the Canucks will use their first pick in the draft on a Swede.
Yep.
That can't be a coincidence.
Nope.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but there are some in our listening audience that constantly point to the fact that the Canucks seem to look past their own backyard, look past the Western Hockey League, and it's not that they don't select out of the Western Hockey League, Sawyer Minio, Parker Alkos, in recent years, but in using their first pick. Now, Lecker-Mackey, Wielander, first rounders. Last year was Melvin Fernstrom, who was a third rounder, but still, when they finally had a chance to pick, they used it on a Swede. So, is that a pattern? Is it a trend? Is it a coincidence? Is it when the best player available, the tipping point default goes to the Swedish player from the Swedish general manager? It's certainly worth noting at the very least. And of course, the Canucks have had a long history of success with Swedes. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong, but I just think that it can't be a coincidence, that there has to be more to a pattern there.
They probably trust their European and Swedish scouts a little more. They have the camera set up in the Canucks draft war room. There is not a lot of activity there, as we're now inside of 1 minute before the Vancouver selection.
We should point out, Matt, that just for those wondering, the war room and some of these teams have been set up in their own National Hockey League team dressing rooms. The Canucks are in the 8th floor boardroom of the tower here that is attached to Rogers Arena. So that's where they're doing their heavy lifting here this afternoon.
Blake brought it up, but insurance for Quinn Hughes, Jeff, do you have to start thinking about that? Does that make a defenseman a little more possible here?
I suppose so. I mean, I think that's part of the reason that they, again, have been linked to Bowen Byram this week, too. I mean, I think everything's in play, but there's absolutely Jim Rutherford's on a record, essentially, acknowledging the possibility that they may need a replacement or at least something, a reasonable facsimile. You're not going to replace Quinn Hughes. So, yeah, I mean, look, they would have better intel than we do if they've had any indication from Quinn or if they're hedging their bet in that way, that maybe that is something that they have to consider at the very least. I still expect them, if they're using the pick, to take a forward. It's just a question of which one.
Cam Robinson is saying that either Eklund or Aitchison would be considered a home run given their draft slot. So
Michael Samuelsson will be making the pick for the Vancouver Canucks. So is that a bit of a tell?
Yeah.
Of course, Michael working over in Europe, in Sweden, working with Canucks prospects. I'll say this, Michael looks fantastic. He looks in even better shape now than when he was as a Blue. Looks a little thinner. Wow, how about that? Retired with all those millions of dollars and he got thinner. Well done, Michael.
Going to have to hustle home from Los Angeles development camp starting this weekend for the Vancouver Canucks.
That's right.
And, of course, he's a big part of the development department now for this hockey club.
And the pick is in. And the Vancouver Canucks have selected Braden Coots, the centerman from the Seattle Thunderbirds. We talked about Coots as being the best center iceman available here. We talked about Coots in terms of, and Mertka, this would go for Mertka as well, the big right shot defenseman who went to Buffalo in the top 10. The Seattle Thunderbirds had been such a good program for a number of years. As we know, junior hockey tends to be cyclical, that they were left there as a couple of 18-year-olds, not necessarily with the deepest or most talented group of teammates in Seattle this year. So everything, I think, a little bit with a grain of salt when we talk about the statistics of Braden Coots this season, playing on a team that just didn't necessarily have the firepower of a lot of other clubs in the Western Hockey League. But this is a pure center, and there's a lot of sort of hybrid, can he play center guys in this draft. He measured 5'11 and a half, weighed in at 186 pounds at the NHL Draft Combine a couple of weeks ago. We mentioned the points, 26 goals, 63 assists, so he was better than a point per game player for Seattle. He also got a chance to play for Canada at the World Under-18s, of course, with Seattle not being a postseason factor. Take these stats as well with a grain of salt because you're playing some teams that just really can't hang with Canada. So it was 12 points in 7 games at the World Under-18s. The Hockey News ranked him as 13th overall, Blake. I know you got the elite prospect list there.
They had him ranked 16th in the range of 12 to 19. The one thing I'll say that differentiates his profile versus a guy like an Eklund is top 6 potential. They carve out the spot, the possibility that he could be, but this is a worker. This is a worker bee, a forechecking machine. The skill is not the biggest attribute, and we talked about there were skill guys there. Eklund and Carbonell are skill guys. Yep. And for a team that
they're wingers, Blake. They're wingers. Yeah. And this is a right shot centerman. Mm-hmm. Sherwood Park, Alberta kid, so one province over. Look, I mentioned I played golf with a couple of WHL players this week. They raved about this young man. I was throwing names at them, giving them comparisons. Who would you take, Coots or this guy, Coots or Reshny, Coots or some of the other Western League forwards? And time after time, they would say Coots. He plays in all situations, power play, penalty kill. He'll be out there protecting a lead late at the junior level. We'll see about that in the National Hockey League. He's got pretty good hands. He's one of these kids, Blake, that if he was an inch or two bigger and 15 pounds heavier. I think there's no way he would be available to the Canucks at 15th overall. The IQ is very, very high here. Everybody seems to like the intelligence that he plays with on the ice. He just may fall a little bit short on a skill and scoring level to be a prototypical NHL top
How's this strike you,
six.
Jeff?
Well, and I know you guys got Cam Robinson coming up, and certainly Cam follows this as closely as anybody. I will admit I'm at an arm's length at that, when it comes to the ins and outs of prospects. But when we had Cam on the other day, and I asked him if they get Coots, will they be happy? Should Canuck fans be happy? And there was sort of a muted response from Cam, in as much as everybody loves the person, the high quality and character that you talked about there, but it is a question of what's the top end here for a team that needs centermen, certainly, but just elite skill. This is a guy that, I think the fact he's a right shot center, don't sleep on that. This is absolutely an organizational need. So I like that. But if I'm a Canuck fan here, I need to like more than the way he holds his stick. And so,
yeah.
It does check a box. Without a doubt, it checks a box. And it's crazy that we sit here still, and it's been a bunch of years, and we talk about the fact that they have done their bidding without right shot centers at the National Hockey League level for basically too long now. I guess Lindholm was in here briefly, but I think it's a safe pick. And when I say that, I just mean that there's a sure floor here for this guy. It's just the question of ultimately, what is the ceiling? But that's what you deal with when you're picking 15th overall.
Yeah.
So let's reset here. Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. The Vancouver Canucks keep their first round selection 15th overall and select Seattle Thunderbird centerman Braden Coots with that pick. The other thing I'll say, guys, for eager beager Canucks fans, this is a kid you can drive down and watch play next season.
True.
Right?
If he comes through Vancouver, plays against the Giants, right?
He's going to play the Giant, absolutely. Yeah. So this is a kid we're going to, because the Western Hockey League, or because he's from our part of the world, we're going to be able to keep a little closer tabs on him because he is going to be a major junior player next year. And look, I don't suspect we're looking at an NHL Player of the Year after that either. No. I think this is probably on the 3-year program. I know now we're seeing a little bit more of draft plus 2 years guys getting opportunity, and that's fair. I don't want to limit them. Perhaps that's available to them, but I think you're counting on this player on your NHL roster. I think you're talking 3 years away before you can realistically expect anything from him. Let's get to the Whistler Golf Club poll question asking you, how do you feel about the Canucks keeping their first round pick and selecting a player? Like it, dislike it? Blake?
I think it is disappointing in the end. I'll give them the off-ramp of, based on what we saw around the league, I get why it happened, but I think it's still possible that you can still say you don't like it. I know nobody was able to pull off a draft floor, asterisk draft floor trade here, but maybe you could have been the one. I just wonder what the circumstances were that led to this. And I don't know if we're going to get an honest response from Patrick Allvin as to why it ended up being kept, and if they fought tooth and nail because they don't want to take away from Braden Coots' moment, I don't think, and say, yeah, we tried to trade it. We settled on the kid. So I don't know that we'll ever get the honest answer there, but I'll say I don't like it because there was always the potential this was used to help get them an NHL center.
Jeff?
I'll lean towards I like it. I guess for the last 48 hours, I sort of had come to the realization that it just felt like they were going to use the pick. And so organizationally, they need right shot centers. I like the fact, as you said, and this is just value added, that he is playing down the highway and will be through Langley, and you can watch him and follow his progression. And, it's not a guy that's grown up on the other side of the world, and you're going to have to watch grainy film of him. You can get your eyeballs on him. And, as we said, Seattle's been a model program in the Western Hockey League here for the last couple of years, and got to the Memorial Cup when it was held up in Kamloops a couple of seasons ago, produced a bunch of really good players over the last years. And so I like that fact that he's coming from a program that had a track record of success here in the last little while. So, all things considered, it doesn't blow me out of the water, but again, this wasn't a top 5 pick. This was sort of the kind of player that I expected that they would get, and he had been linked to the Canucks for so long that I am not surprised that Braden Coots ends up being the selection of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jeff. We were talking about this young man March, April in terms of, looks like he'll probably be there for the Canucks around where they picked. Right shot center from this neck of the woods. Good two-way guy. I'm going to vote like it. Look, if you could have swung one of these deals like Montreal got for Noah Dobson, like Utah got for J.J. Peterka, where the cost of acquisition wasn't as steep as we thought it might be, then I would have been all for trading the 15th overall selection, given the way the Canucks are managed and what their priorities are in terms of the playoffs next year and Quinn Hughes. But I've been one of the many people who have said, look, you're just kicking the can down the road and eventually delaying the rebuild that's going to come, or you're going to fall short of building a championship team because you trade out so many prospects and picks. So from that standpoint, I quite like it. And, as I mentioned, I played golf with a couple of WHL players this week who just raved about the young man. So I've got to admit that is influencing my decision as well. I'm going to vote like it on the Whistler Golf Club poll question. The Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club now taking bookings for any time during the 2025 season. Primetime's filling up fast. Whether you're golfing or just visiting Whistler, check out Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill. That overlooks the 18th green. It's home of Whistler's Best Burger. Fantastic selection of local beers there as well. And if you do have a group of 12 or more, tell them about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups. Other thing I'd like to say now is Blake tracks our YouTube subscriptions, and we're getting close to a big round number there. So if you are watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Blake is going to be such a happy guy if we get to that big round number by the end of the weekend. He'll be beaming on Monday, and really, Mike and I need him beaming on Monday after a very early flight back from Toronto. Ain't that the case, Mike?
I will shout out whoever becomes that 10,000th subscriber. And I will also shout out Eagle Bay, who has been donating super chats with no comments, just wants to get those proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation.
Very nice.
A big thank you to Eagle Bay for contributing in that regard.
We do have Cam Robinson coming up here from the draft in Los Angeles when he gets a minute to sneak away. And we now do have Victor Eklund selected in this first round. The New York Islanders must be absolutely giddy. Now, he's not James Hagens, the Long Island guy that they were hoping to get when they made this trade with Montreal for the 2 first-round picks, 16 and 17. But I'm going to guess they didn't expect that Eklund would be available to them at 16th overall. So the New York Islanders are going to walk away from this draft from Matthew Schaefer, the first overall, maybe the biggest faller in Eklund at 16. And they've got the next selection here as well. So we'll see what they do. Jeff, our first opportunity to talk to you about this matter with the Vancouver Canucks. So let's get off the draft for a moment and talk about Conor Garland and this rumored 6-year, $6 million per year extension. What are our thoughts there?
I'm all right with it. I think that's the price of doing business in the new economy of the rising salary cap world in the National Hockey League. It's a slight raise for a guy who has battled hard for a bunch of years for the Vancouver Canucks. My issue isn't with the contract or with the player. It's on a really good team, on a Stanley Cup contender. Conor Garland is a third-line guy, a guy that drives a third line and gives your third line an edge over most of your opponents. But you tell me, how long are we going to have to wait for the Vancouver Canucks to have 6 forwards better than Conor Garland? And that's my issue, that Conor Garland's already here. He's been part of this team that has spun its wheels for far too long, aside from the outlier season that was last year. And you know exactly what you're getting in Conor Garland. He's a 50-point guy, no more, no less. The engine's going. He wins puck battles. He's fun to watch. He's hard to play against, all those types of things. But he's a 50-point guy at the end of the day. He's consistently a 50-point guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the going right now for 50-point guys is going to be in that neighborhood of $6 million. So, I think it's in line with the kind of contract that he deserves. 6 years, maybe a little surprised when they have made it so abundantly clear that they didn't want to go long-term with Brock Besser, but they're willing to go long-term with just about anybody that's not named Brock Besser, it feels like. And, they were quick to give extensions to Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. And here, before he's even eligible to sign an extension, I don't know what the hurry was necessarily, but they're getting a deal done with Conor Garland. So, again, that just lends me more ammunition, I guess, to think that Brock Besser has turned the page, and certainly the reports out there today that he's going to market, and that's not a surprise. I am going to be really interested to see, what's at the top of Brock's priority list after years of spinning his wheels here with an underachieving Vancouver Canucks team. I hope he puts himself in a position to win. He's going to get paid wherever he goes.
Sorry, Jeff, let me just jump in because I saw it on Twitter, and I don't know if it's pure rumor, fantasy, what have you, or if there's actually some real to this, but I saw that the Winnipeg Jets were tied to Brock Besser. And when are the Winnipeg Jets ever tied to a free agent, let alone an American free agent who's a scoring winger? But what do we know about Winnipeg? Really good team. And a few hours north of Minnesota and all the family there, right?
It's borderline Minnesota.
If Minnesota doesn't want to pay you because they have other priorities, and you're looking to go closer to home, the way a Canadian community has embraced Brock Besser and the Besser family, that could easily continue in Winnipeg. I'd love it from a Winnipeg lands a big free agent storyline angle. I'd love it from a Brock gets as close to home as he possibly can storyline angle. And quite frankly, if they're losing Nikolai Ehlers, they're going to need some goals, and he's going to get a chance to play some good offensive players.
Yeah, he's sort of the anti-Nikolai Ehlers. Ehlers does it with speed, where that's not Brock's calling card, obviously. But look, I hope that there's a long line of teams that want to get their hands on Brock Besser. I hope he has options. But after years of really not getting much of a sniff in terms of team success, I hope that he uses this opportunity to position himself to play for a team that's going to be a perennial playoff team. That's my wish for him, but ultimately there'll be a ton of factors, I'm sure, that go into all of that. On the Conor Garland front, I will say this, that he's a proud Bostonian, has represented Team USA again at the World Championships. Like he's proudly American. I wondered if he would have looked as a guy, and he said all the right things. I think he's enjoyed his time in Vancouver. I just thought he might be a guy that tried to orchestrate a move closer to home, or at least back across the border. But if he's signing a 6x6 extension here, that would suggest that he wants to be here. We know how much he enjoyed playing for Rick Tocchet in two different spots. I always kind of thought maybe there was a way that they would be reunited for a third time, and somewhere down the line it may happen. But in the short term, for Conor Garland, good on him. He's fun to watch, as I said, and that he's just going to show up and compete and play hard. It's just they need more. They just need a lot more than, and that's why, like, even if they decide to bite the bullet and go with P.S. Suter and find a way to get, like, that's fine. But he was here too. Like,
yes,
they got to get better. And
yeah, the same crew with Evander Kane is not actually getting you that much further ahead here. And Evander Kane instead of Besser, ultimately. With the 7 more years of Garland, if you can get 5 good ones out of the 7, I think the contract is a win. Do you think you can do that? Do you think he's got 5 good years left in him?
I see no reason why not. He's been really durable in his time as a Canuck. And even though he's undersized, we know how tenacious he is. I think, he seems to take good care of himself and reports in peak shape and all those types of things. I see no reason. Like, I don't see any of his sort of identifiable skills falling off the cliff. Like, skating's not an issue for him, and I don't think it will be as time marches on. And again, he's going to be 30 here. It's not like they're signing this when he's 33. He's not John Tavares at that stage of his career. So, No, I mean, look, lots of guys can perform well into their mid-30s. I mean, the aging curve doesn't seem to matter to the Dallas Stars. When you look at Joe Pavelski and Jamie Benn and re-upping with Matt Duchene, I think Conor Garland strikes me as a guy that absolutely can continue to give you what he's given you. Again, though, you also know with Conor Garland that I don't see him having a breakout season at this stage of his career. I see him as a guy that's going to push 20 goals and 50 points. You can use him in all situations. He took on penalty killing last year, so we sort of added that. But again, it wouldn't be my choice to have him on your top unit power play, and yet he was consistently out there as that sort of fake slap shot over on the sideboards. He really isn't a shooting threat. He was used as a guy that transported the puck, some entries, puck battles and retrievals, those types of things. But again, if the plan here is for this team to get competitive and be a force in the division and then ultimately get out of the division, they need a whole lot more above Conor Garland. So Conor Garland in the third line position, if you could lock him in there and tell me that they were going to bring in a boatload of guys that could play ahead of him on the depth chart, then fine. But if he is forced to play higher just because they don't have adequate replacements for him yet, that's not ideal. I don't think that's in the best interest of the hockey club.
All right, an update from the draft where you'll be pleased to know that E from Entourage is still a New York Islanders fan and still willing to do NHL events at their beck and call. He announces the third Islanders pick of the day, 17th overall, and the Islanders get the number 1 overall pick and the two biggest fallers in this draft in both Victor Eklund and Kashawn Aitchison, the big defenseman from the Barrie Colts that we've been talking about for a number of picks.
That's a draft class. That is a good draft class.
Well, I mean, it cost them Noah Dobson, though, Blake. Let's not remember the
costs
you're right,
here.
You're
right.
Very, very extreme. A first pair right shot offensive defenseman. They may go many, many years before finding a player like Noah Dobson again, but they got a couple of good young players and they got great value taking them at 16 and 17. The other story that we've got going on here from this draft, and of course a new setup in LA before a live audience with no teams on the floor. So the stage, Gary is more proximal to his people, Blake. And as you know, this is where Gary lets his hair down and has some fun with the crowd.
Has he danced?
At the draft. He has not yet danced. I have not yet seen him conduct the orchestra in Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline, as he tends to do from the draft. But I'm seeing some loosey-goosey one-handed handshake / hugs from the commissioner, not the stiff, NHL code handshake. I do wonder whether that's because of the presence of all the celebrities who are pretty quick to greet these
he might just be going loopy.
Hugs.
He might be going loopy because they're 2.5 hours in. We're just past the halfway mark of the opening round here. The NBA first round took 2 hours totality.
It was very quick, the NBA first round this year. Quickest in many, many years.
That's what it should be. 2 hours is a good draft night. That's a good TV show.
Guys, and
you got to give them some time on the clock because that facilitates trades. I just wonder if Gary's regretting 32 teams now with how long this thing is.
But I think, guys, and we've all covered enough of these things, that once you get past really the top 3 drafts, to me it's far less a national event and more of a regional. Like, when the Boston Bruins pick 7th overall, Bruins fans care. The greater audience doesn't need the whole dog and pony show with the Bruins front office, and I don't even care really to hear that much about from the player himself. That Bruins media is going to get a chance and talk to him, and so there are so many ways to tighten it up. They don't consult me in these matters, but this idea that the player does the whole Zoom room thing and then turns around and does a secondary interview right after that with the broadcast host, the clock should start the minute the one pick is in. Then the clock should start again. They seem to be delaying that. Need to go back to the panel for all sorts of discussion. So again, I think visually it looks great. Like, I think the set and some of the things that they've done there look really good, but also a few elements that they probably could use a do-over on.
Yeah, and we'll be back to a draft floor with teams next year, and of course we'll be back to draft shout-outs to the watch party happening at the Applebee's in the strip mall off the expressway.
Well, we still got that from Jeremy Roenick.
Did we?
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
I'll give a shout out to Yellow
Wait a
Dog,
second. That's Chicago?
which hopefully is poured in some of those establishments. Let me shout out the Be Cool Pineapple Tapache from Neighborhood Brewing right now. That's available, a funky little number, inspired by the traditional Mexican tapache. It's bursting with pineapple flavor, hint of cinnamon for some warmth as well. It's a laid-back brew, crispy, tangy. Go find it at your nearest private or government liquor store.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. We appreciate you hanging in with us here today. And I anticipate that the Vancouver Canucks will make at least Todd Harvey available here, their director of amateur scouting, to discuss this pick. Thanks, Jeff. Talk to you Monday.
I think the plan is Patrick Elvine this evening and then Todd Harvey to wrap the draft on Saturday afternoon.
Okay. Good.
Thank
and
you, sir.
it would be interesting to hear what Alvin says with regards to how much trade discussion was around this pick, because as we long suspected, I think the Vancouver Canucks preference was to make this deal, to use it as part of a package to lure that top two center. And guys, maybe one more, Jeff, like now we're almost at situation critical, right? In terms of this hunt for a top two center. Like now it's going to be more difficult to acquire one via trade, and there are slim pickings on the UFA market. I had asked Blake earlier in the show, are we down to everything, a bidding war on Michael Granlund? Make sure you win the Michael Granlund bidding war.
Boy, and it's so unfair to Michael Granlund, but man, would that be underwhelming for a Vancouver fan base that's seen Marcus Granlund come and go. But yeah, possibly. I will say this, that again, and it's been a storyline here for too long, that the Canucks in the market for help at center ice, that the best, you're reminded on days like this, the best place to find centers is in the draft and groom them and develop them yourself. But when you look at Abbotsford and how they just won a Calder Cup, it wasn't necessarily on the backs of center ice prospects. I mean, Ty Mueller somewhere down the line, maybe a bottom six guy for you, but Nate Smith was one of the centers out there. Chase Waters probably isn't going to see the National Hockey League, even though a guy gives it all, was the captain out there. And even, Max Sasson, again, isn't a top-end center. So I will say this, that I was curious where Roger McQueen would go, and to see him wind up in Anaheim, a team that already has Leo Carlsson and Mason McTavish, and now you add 6'5" Roger McQueen, that's how you build the middle of the ice.
Yep, they're taking the swing there, hoping his medicals are going to be okay and that he can be a player. And there's some other examples here as well about how you build center ice. Okay, Jeff, we'll let you get to your other duties here this evening. Thank you for this, and we'll catch up on Monday.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Jeff Patterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of Rink-Wide Vancouver, which had a splendid year this year, not only recapping all the Canucks games, all 82, but of course going on that long playoff run with the eventual Calder Cup champion Abbotsford Canucks.
Which, by the way, that rally looked like it was a lot of fun. The Abbotsford rally.
Well, I was going to get to the rally here. First of all, and
there's a lot of WWE walk-ins.
I realized the proceeds, or some proceeds, were going to charity, but to charge your fans for a championship celebration.
Yeah, always handout. Always the handout.
Yeah. Number two, I think the chairman might have miscalculated how much of the bloom and the shine from the Abbotsford Canucks
would polish up his image.
Yeah, exactly.
But did not.
Because that was a resounding set of boos. I think he did well to escape without a sell the team chant.
No, there was a sell the team shouted
it wasn't
at him.
full or throat.
No,
it
chant.
was shouted. Yeah. I thought a chant might follow the way that was going. And then thirdly, I loved Manny and the players all leaning in and having the time of their lives. Like, that was a lot of fun. So good on them. And yes, I do wonder whether that reception may affect the chairman in any kind of public appearances, or speeches going forward. We know that's not his comfort zone to begin with. He wanted to be right there with the trophy. He wanted to have some of that rub off on him, and he fell somewhat short. Let's get to this development, because we have a draft pick from a BC Major Junior team. Cole Reshny, the forward with the Victoria Royals, has been selected with the 18th overall pick from the Calgary Flames. So he stays here in Western Canada. Cole Reshny had a terrific second half of the season. I'm just trying to get the hometown here on Reshny. Oh, yeah, he's a Saskatchewan boy. Some don't believe he will be an NHL centerman because he's a little bit light and short, but everyone seems to like the whole game. And is he off to North Dakota, Blake, if I'm not mistaken? I believe he is, with the big draft eligible.
That rings a bell, yes. That rings
from
a bell.
the Royals. Next year, there will be a huge Keaton Verhoff, a huge draft prospect who was supposed to be with the Victoria Royals, but now will be heading to the University of North Dakota. So we have another we have another Western Hockey Leaguer off the board. We have another BC-based Western Hockey Leaguer off the board. Actually, I guess he's the first BC-based Western Hockey Leaguer. The rest of them have come from state of Washington or other environments, province of Alberta. And we still do anticipate a couple of other British Columbians to be selected here in the first round. Lyndon Likovich of Kelowna. He's with the Moose Jaw Warriors. He's a big winger. And then the top goaltender available in this draft, North Vancouver's Joshua Ravensburger, who plies his trade for the Prince George Cougars.
A little color from Coots, by the way. The Canucks draft pick declared himself a former Oilers fan. He says, obviously not
good
anymore.
for him. Yeah.
Obviously not anymore. So he knows which side to bread is butter now.
Yeah.
He's dropped the oil.
Yeah, and one of the things that he was praised for by all the scouts was this is a really smart, put together hockey IQ young man. It seems he's got some IQ off the ice as well, knowing to placate his new fan base and the audience. The other thing is he does seem to be a Western Hockey Leaguer who's going to be staying in Seattle. I may have jumped the gun earlier when I talked about being able to see this guy play down the I-5 and seeing him when he comes through Langley and the LAC to face the Giants, because so many of these Western Hockey Leaguers seem to be exploring their NCAA options. But he is apparently committed to
for next year anyway. Next year anyway. I think these are going to be year-to-year propositions going forward here, Blake, with all this WHLers. It would still behoove him. I mean, that would be a nice development. And actually, if I'm the Canucks, I really don't mind that. Next year in Seattle, year after in NCAA, and then come out and try your hand at professional hockey.
Yeah. Cam Robinson is going to join us here after the 20th overall selection. Cam has duties there, of course, with Elite Prospects, his primary employer, where he's director of film scouting and director of content.
He can't survive on Sekeres and Price money. There's no question about it.
Well, Sekeres and Price can barely survive on Sekeres and Price money, particularly the Price family with all those children and financial needs. Yes, Cam's going to join us here. And I guess that would be, well, if these picks go down in the order that they should, it wouldn't be that long, but we'll see how much time there is between picks. It gives about 5-6 minutes at minimum before Cam's going to join us. Cam, of course, will have a great book on Braden Coots and be able to break down the pick from that end of things. Something that we used to do all the time at the draft, Blake, and let's bring that back here, because I know audiences in the past have enjoyed this, but we talk about where the Vancouver Canucks selection was ranked in all the different public lists. So let's get to that. Braden Coots was the number 13 overall prospect according to the Hockey News. He was the number 14 overall prospect by the consolidated ratings. There are outlets out there that take the rankings from every list and put them in and come out with your average. Elite Prospects had him at number 16. Bob McKenzie had him at number 18. Craig J. Button didn't love him. He was at number 22. The Hockey News, Tony Ferrari had him number 11. And McKean's had him at number 17. Chris Peters and Flow Hockey at number 14. Down and down it goes, ranked 20th overall amongst North American skaters by NHL Central Scouting, so they didn't particularly love
Shane
him.
Malloy had him at 20 as well, but I would say it's pretty 50-50. In fact, I'd probably say it's more 60% had him inside the 15 and about 40% on the other side of the 15, but there's enough evidence there that, the Canucks certainly did not reach for this player.
No.
It was a pretty apropos drafting here. The Sportsnet guys, Cosentino 14, Bukala 15, Dauber 15, Smart Scouting 14. So right around where he went.
Yeah, and the other thing we should mention, Kid's been a very good forechecker over the years. Too bad Rick Tocchet isn't here anymore, and who knows, maybe Adam Foote is going to play the exact same system as Rick Tocchet, given that he's sort of like his NHL coaching dad. He hasn't coached with anyone else in the National Hockey League. So in terms of, here's Elite Prospects draft guide on him, a one-man forecheck. Coots' motor and energy are undeniably elite. In a single shift, he can amass multiple retrievals, guiding opponents into a big hit, spinning off a check, passing, winning another race by winning inside position meters before the boards, and repeating this over and over until the puck finds twine. Primarily a playmaker, he escapes with quick passes inside and occasionally deceives opponents to find a backdoor option after passing. He dashes to the net to create traffic and collect loose pucks. I'll read a couple of things here from anonymous scouts who spoke to the Hockey News on Braden Coots. Quote, he's one of my favorites. He doesn't have anyone to play with, and he gets the tough matchups, and he still really makes things happen. He's really smart with deceptive skill. He skates well, and he plays hard. He checks all the boxes.
Alberta guys, as we mentioned, Sherwood Park, but did come out to Yale Academy, so there's some roots out here, and now with Seattle too. The one playoff series for this year for the Seattle Thunderbirds is actually better rate than his regular season. He had 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points in the 6 games for the Seattle Thunderbirds. So, tough time of year, and they were not a great team, Seattle. So to be undermanned or underskilled as a team, but for still to have a great playoff series like that, that's also a nice little feather in his cap.
Dominic is in our super chats, and everybody, our super chats are always open on YouTube. Partial proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation. Other thing we should say is hit that subscribe button. We are very close to a big round number, and Blake would really like if you subscribed and got us to that big round number by Monday's program. Dominic says, Canadian, Irish, gritty, captain material. Love it.
I didn't know the Irish part. It's good.
Yeah, I guess. And he spells it Braed.
Maybe that's the hint.
That's the other thing we should talk about here, Blake. This is an all-time dub name. Braden Coots. Every year at the WHL Bantam Draft, or they just call it the WHL Draft now, we look for the Bradens, the Aidens, the Jadens, all the Duns. Caden. How could I forget Caden? I am sure that we would have name-checked Braden Coots a few years ago when he came into the dub, because that is an all-time dub name there.
Yeah.
Braden Coots.
That's the Celtic spelling, clearly.
Yeah, it is the Celtic. Another anonymous scout to the Hockey News as we await Cam Robinson. It's just the way he goes about his game. He plays first PK, first PP, and he has excellent hands. He can pick up a puck in the neutral zone, move up swiftly down the wall. He can go wide of the net. He finds players with accurate passes. He's one of those players who has it all with his skating, skill, and sense. Yeah, people like the skating here too, Blake. We had started to get to the portion of the draft where you had some concerns about skate, like the hands, like the skill, or like the size, all of those things, but had a question or two about the skating. We were starting to see some of those prospects go, and this is a good skater. And for my money, skating is one of the most important things when we're talking about a young player and whether they project or where they project in the National Hockey League.
It doesn't sound like he's got the flat-out speed. We're not talking about a speedster, but the feet are always moving, so he'll get there, and it sounds like the fitness and everything is there for him too. So even if he's not a true burner, his tenacity makes up for it, and he's going to be able to cover the ground, particularly on the forecheck, right? So he sounds like a nice player.
He does.
But the question will be, is the skill enough that you're going to look back and say, yep, that was worth 15th overall? That's the only question mark there. And we're going to have really interesting comparisons, I think, because those high school guys came relatively soon after, with Eklund right after him, and now Carbonell's gone to St. Louis at 19. So, that will be the comparison. You had those guys available to you, and Aitchison to a degree at a different position at defense, but those three guys are sort of who we had on our palette, and they go almost immediately right after in succession.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, Carbonell had the privilege of being selected by insult comic Nikki Glazer.
Really?
Now, I thought she was from New York. She's from St. Louis?
Where's John Hamm? That's his office.
Absolutely. Maybe John Hamm finally said, you know what, the NHL asked too often.
He is a pretty working actor. He might just be on a gig right now. So maybe
that's right.
Yeah.
And how about this, Blake? Lou Dort, the recently crowned NBA champion with the Oklahoma City Thunder, a Montreal guy. He was supposed to make the Habs selections today from Los Angeles, but they traded both picks. So Lou Dort's just walking around in a Montreal jersey or jacket with nothing to do in Los Angeles, mere hours after winning the NBA championship.
Is there any NBA player, or is there any team that's looking around going, that's an upgrade on what we got, what we brought here to the draft? Maybe we should get him to do our next pick. Like, it's not going to be Ottawa because they've got Tom Green, which is an interesting choice. A little on the nose for me, Matt, for the Ottawa side. Got Winnipeg coming up.
Well, the thing about Tom is he left L.A., right? He went back to Ottawa, bought a farm, and basically disavowed celebrity and La La Land celebrity culture.
How many fans watching are like, who is this guy?
You don't think they'll know Tom Green?
I'm guessing Tom Green at his height was still pretty niche.
Yeah, it's been a while since Freddie got fingered, and of course that cameo in Charlie's Angels. I went to a stand-up show here a few years ago at the Rio. It was actually pretty funny. And as you know, like, he's not like,
traditional.
Certainly
funny.
The films he did were not necessarily my genre of comedies.
They are the ketchup of comedies, if you will.
Yes, very much so. You know how much I hate ketchup, and I, like, Freddie Got Fingered is not one that I'm gonna, catch at the box office.
That didn't make the New York Times best films of the quarter century, by the way.
But like, that's part of his act. Like, he'll tell you, oh yeah, people talk about how it's like, amongst the worst on Rotten Tomatoes. Siskel and Ebert ripped it and whatnot. But do you know how many times I'm walking around any city and someone comes up to me and quotes the movie? Quite a bit. Cam Robinson is going to join us here momentarily. Mike, he tells me he's got the link. He's ready to connect here in a moment or two. He's going to give his breakdown of Braden Coots. Let's get to today's menu, brought to you by Greta, about what's coming on in the rest of the program. And obviously a different program for us here today, going in the evening as opposed to our noon Pacific time usual start. Greta, great spot to watch all the games, to pregame, to postgame. You're mere steps from the stadium or the arena, but it's an even better spot for your team building event or your summer sociable. If you're planning a party this summer, check out our friends at Greta. They have the air hockey, the Pop-A-Shot, the video games galore. The street food menu is fantastic. There's no pretense to it. You get an awesome poutine, a terrific burger. The tacos are amazing. For more info to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. Cam Robinson joining us here in a moment. Evander Kane, new Vancouver Canuck, and of course Vancouver's own Evander Kane. He spoke yesterday at Rogers Arena. We will discuss what Evander said and didn't say in his introduction to Canucks media and to Canucks fans. And then later in the program, BC Lions in Regina and what could be a battle of backup quarterbacks. The Whitecaps closing in on a very big in-house signing, and they've got a big one this Sunday against LA, plus Canada at the Gold Cup, and more news about Canada down the year as well. A huge shocker for the Raptors today with Masai Ujiri out as team president. All of that covered later in the program. And since we're talking a fair bit of junior hockey players here, at least, Blake, we should also mention that the Vancouver Giants have new leadership. The club has named Nat Dominicelli, Hockey Canada icon Nat Dominicelli, is the fourth general manager in club history, and Parker Burgess, the 10th head coach in franchise history. Burgess had been coaching in the USHL.
Dominic Kelly was over at the Spengler this year with a group of the managers. By the way, disturbing chat topic. What would the nickname be for Coots with the Vancouver Canucks? Cootsy, Cooties.
Yeah. Maybe it's
Hooter?
just Coots. Ooh.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just Coots. Like, can you really improve on Coots as a nickname?
Guaranteed. You're right. You can't. It's one syllable. It's
one
very
syllable.
easy to say.
Right.
Hockey players cannot resist. They have to change it. They will do something.
It's got to be Cootsy then. You just add the Y.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many hockey players do you think have a dog named Puxy?
I don't think Puxy is a very good name. I don't think
I would bet there's many of them with a dog named Puxy.
No.
Okay, the 20th selection, we should also mention Meredith Gaudreau, the widow of Johnny Gaudreau, has made the selections here today for the Columbus Blue Jackets live on stage in Los Angeles and received a rousing standing ovation. The first time she was up there, Columbus is just making its second pick of the draft. Oh, and how about this? This is a big shocker. They are going with Peter Andrianov from Russia. He's a goaltender, and that means that North Vancouver's Joshua Ravensbergen will not be the first goaltender off the board here in this draft, and that may take up one of the potential goaltender spots. Ravensbergen may fall to the second round now. We'll see if there's other teams that are inclined to go goaltender. This was not a particularly beloved class of goaltending prospects, yet there were a few. Ravensbergen ranks as one of the better Canadian goaltending prospects in some time. This Andrianov from Moscow, was in the mix to be, we thought the second goaltender, but it turns out he is going to be the first. There's another Russian, Medvedev, who plays for the Memorial Cup champion London Knights, who is anticipated as a second-round pick. And then Ivankovic, a Canadian goaltender who's a little undersized. I see they list him at 6 foot. I'm sure he stretched on his tippy toes. Jack Ivankovic, who's been a world junior for the Brampton OHL team. You typically see a run on goaltenders somewhere in the second round. Like, someone will take a goaltender, let's say 5 picks into the second round, and then other teams go, we better go get our goaltender now because now the goaltenders are coming off the board.
The Thatcher Demko spot,
20th,
if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Very good, Blake. So the 20th overall pick here goes goaltender Andrianov, playing over in Russia. He's the first Russian, too, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
We should also mention Jim Nill won GM of the Year, Executive of the Year. That's his third in a row. For Jim
Three
Nill.
in a row for Jim Nill. Well, they get to the NHL Final Four. They just don't get over
Bill
the hump.
Zito, number 2. Kevin Cheveldayoff.
How did Zito not get the award in one of the last 3 years? Like, he's been further than Nill. I like Jim. I think Jim is a terrific GM, a stand-up guy. He's an ex-Canuck. I've not ever heard a bad word about Jim Nill.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other guy has gone farther than you all 3 years.
Yeah, I don't know how Zito re-racks his team year after year. Not fully, but, he has to make changes. Winning teams generally slough off a bunch of players because they go to greener pastures and can cash in. Zito continues to win, and he's second.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking for Patrick Olvin's name. Just don't.
No, you're not going to find it there.
See it.
You will find Michael D. Gillis, Blake. In 2011.
No, I just mean any votes here, Matt. I'm not even
I
a
thought
vote.
you were looking through the historic NHL Executive of the Year. Did Gillis win the first? Like what?
Yeah, something like that.
As as I recall, I thought it was a pretty new award when Gillis won it.
Kent Hughes and Steve Staios got at least one vote. Stan Bowman got a couple of votes.
Well, and Hughes did well to get the vote before he swings this Noah Dobson fleecing here today.
Sure.
I mean, Blake, I was discussing this with some friends in Montreal. You want to talk about weaponizing cap space? Do you remember he gets the first round pick for taking Sean Monahan off the Calgary books? Then he goes off and he trades Monahan for good return. Kent Hughes does. When he's being terrible, he knows he's going to be terrible. Other teams didn't want to eat the Monahan money. He ate the Monahan money. He parlays it into another first-round pick. He then takes that pick and packages it with a bottom six forward and his own first-round pick, and he gets a top-pair right-side defenseman in Noah Dobson. We use the phrase tidy work too often here in Vancouver. That is more than tidy work in Montreal. Like, that is unbelievable work. That is industrial laundry work.
It's true.
If you will, from Kent Hughes, the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens.
By the way, does Columbus only use Eastern European goaltenders? Is that
I
mandatory?
I think that is now a rule. Yes, they are not allowed to use North American goaltender. Okay, what is Cam Robinson's coming up? He's a presentation of your Pacific Toyota dealers. Blake, why don't you tell them about the BZ4X while we get Cam connected here from Los Angeles?
Yes, the newest addition to the Toyota electric lineup. Drive in the Hoff lane, make your life easier, shorten your workday, and do it in style and with a lot of fun. The BZ4X deserves a test drive. Go to your nearest Pacific Toyota dealer, find out what it's all about. That's all they ask. You'll fall in love. You can finance it for 0.99% APR for 36 months. That's the LE all-wheel drive edition, and up to $5,000 in incentives as well. ShopToyota.ca.
Here he is, the director of content and film scouting for Elite Prospects, Mr. Cam Robinson, weekly regular for us. He joins us from the draft in Los Angeles, and boy, does he look sharp. How are you, Cam?
Thank you. I have found myself a nice little hole between the suites and the media row. Hopefully it's not too loud and the internet stays stable.
So first and foremost, the Vancouver Canucks keep the pick. You made a bold prediction that everyone thought was hot takey a couple of days ago on Sekeres and Price. So here's your opportunity to take a bow. I guess you weren't surprised that they wound up selecting a player.
I wasn't surprised. Yeah, wasn't that surprised. Just as we got closer and closer, just didn't seem like anybody was biting on that 15th overall pick. And to be fair, people weren't biting on picks earlier than that too. So there was all sorts of picks available. I'll give myself a little back pat that I nailed that one that they actually did, but I'm maybe 50-50 this week on getting things right. So I can't be too celebratory just yet.
So as we count down to the pick, you say something to the effect of, if they get Eklund or Aitchison, this is a home run.
Yes.
And both of them are available.
Yes.
But they go Braden Coots. So
yes.
if you're a Canucks fan, should you be disappointed or only mildly so?
I wouldn't be disappointed with Braden Coots. I'll say that. I think that I think they left some meat on the bone. How about that? Let's just say that. And it's not surprising. I mean, he was mocked to Vancouver in a lot of people's mock drafts because he was literally the only player that they seemed to show any interest in at the combine, right? They took him out for dinner. They didn't, Patrick Alvin wasn't even here, but that's Cammy took him out and yeah, right. So he's a good player though. I just think that the upside, especially for Victor Eklund, was really a lot for a lot of teams to pass up, and especially at Vancouver, the Swedish GM, the Swedish player, he plays such a hard style. I thought it was, a little disappointing that they didn't go that route or the smash mouth in Keishon Aitchison. But again, Coots is a good player. He's a safe player. He just maybe doesn't have that pure upside that a couple other guys left on the board have.
What is lacking there, Cam? Give us the player breakdown profile scouting report.
Yeah, let's talk about the pluses first. Okay, very speed-driven player, pace, quality two-way guy, really good defensive habits, right-handed center, all good things going for him. A leader, very well respected, very well spoken. Everybody I've ever talked to, speaks very, very highly of Braden Coots. Generates offense at the junior level at a steady clip too, on a not very good T-Birds team, I should add as well. So, everything ran through him until Rudy Murka showed up and started playing 30 minutes a night on that blue line, and then everything started to run through him. What he's lacking is pure, creativity and high-end offense. Is that, when I watch this player, I don't look at him and be like, hey, there's a top six center. I look at him and be like, hey, there's a middle bottom six center probably, right? And we've seen these type of players go in the past, and they go fairly early, or they go in this range. Peyton Krebs is one that you could compare him to. And Krebs is kind of a third or fourth line center, and that's what he's going to be now. And so Coots, maybe there's a little extra juice there, and he could be a second liner if everything breaks right. But I think that it's more of a middle six, bottom six type of guy that can play a lot of different roles for your team.
I was going to ask, do you think he will be a primary penalty killer? Do you think he will be a guy protecting a late lead sort of player for them?
Yeah, I would say that. And he's not big, but he's not small. He's kind of a medium-sized player, but like I said, he has good feet, he has good pace, he has good habits, and those are all things that work well on a defensive player down the line too. So yes, I do think that that's the type of player that they're going to be expecting in a few years.
Why do you think at this point in the evolution of the Vancouver Canucks they went safe? They went with a guy that is with the higher floor.
They wanted a center. I think that was very well known that they wanted a center. And I have no idea if they had Eklund ahead of him on their board and they just decided, hey, we're going to stick with the center. A right-handed center to boot, right? It's a difficult asset to obtain versus maybe a hard skill winger. Those can maybe be a little more readily available. And again, I think that they just maybe not being at the combine and having experience with all these guys, or just kind of locking into your list and being like, this is what we need, this is what we want. And I think probably a few teams fell into that trap, and that's why Eklund slipped, and that's why Aitchison slipped a little bit as well. So they're not the only ones here that let those guys pass. But yeah, I think they really wanted a center, and when you looked at who's available left, it was him and Cole Reshny, and I think Reshny had far higher offensive upside, but a lot more risk attached to him too if that offense doesn't break right.
How far away from the NHL do you think Coots is?
Because he's so responsible and he has the good feet, maybe a little bit sooner than some of these guys that are going to be picked in and around him and after him. But, don't expect to see him anytime soon. I think if he can push at camp in 2 years and then end up in the AHL, that's probably what you're looking at. A multi-year wait in all likelihood. Yeah.
Yeah, Bo was early, but they did let him be the fourth line center for a bit, and that seems like a reasonable expectation that in 2 years' time, not in draft year, draft plus one like Bo, but in 2 years' time, maybe he fights for a fourth line spot and shows them how responsible he is, right?
And it depends on the evolution of the team too, right? Is that like the Canucks, at that point in their juncture, they could afford to do that. And Bo was such a tank too, right? Physically, he was capable of withstanding fourth line minutes. And we'll see if Coots can add that kind of weight to be in that situation. But I never want to rush kids, especially like a mid first round pick. It's just give him all the time, and when he's ready, he'll be ready to take a spot.
Bo also had the NHL body, I think.
Yeah.
At 18 years old. Okay, Cam, we saw this a couple of years ago when the Vancouver Canucks made the trade for JT Miller on day 2 of the draft. If I'm not mistaken, there were a couple of other trades that day.
Canucks have a few of those pesky draft picks still left here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I know it's theoretically possible, but do you think the lack of picks for player trades today is an indication that that's what we're looking at tomorrow? Or is there any chance that we might see any kind of trade activity involving NHL roster players once we get through this first round and everyone has an opportunity to breathe and take stock?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I hope so, and we're all rooting for something, some more chaos and some more intrigue and drama, because we're over 3 hours deep into this process here, and we've still got 10 picks left. It's been a bit of a slug, but I mean, to be fair, JJ Peterka and Noah Dobson moving, those are big names. It just didn't happen during the draft. I know that the Dobson trade got announced, but it got done. As far as I know, I think it was basically sewn up late last night, even. So yes, I think that there's a chance we're going to see some bodies, but I'm far less optimistic than I was, 3 hours ago, when it really looked like Utah was going to maybe move that fourth pick, or the Islanders were going to try to move heaven and earth to get Hagens.
Yeah, that would have been fun. And then, of course, Canucks are in a spot now, huh, buddy? We are running out of occasions to find our second line center. I'll ask you the same question I put to Jeff and I put to Blake. Are we now down to Canucks better win a bidding war for Michael Granlund on Canada Day to fill that 2C role?
Oh boy, that'll be a tough pill to swallow. I had somebody reach out to me and say that St. Louis it looks like the favorite for Granlund too, but so we'll see how that actually shakes down. But I mean, there are so many teams that are looking for centers right now. Like there is an awful lot of teams that are looking for it, and that just obviously increases the value of anybody who has one. And there aren't many out there. Marco Rossi, the Canucks have been all over it. They got to up their offer if they want to get him, and that offer included that 15th overall pick. So if Minnesota doesn't love Braden Coots, then now you've just lost that trade chip too, right? So it's going to be very difficult for them to make a trade now without carving a big chunk out of their roster to make a play. So you're right, it's going to be bargain bin shopping, or it's like, all right, Filipino, please be a second line center.
Yeah. Marvelous stuff, my friend. Thank you for taking some time out at the draft. Thank you for the second hit this week, and I look forward to catching up next week when we have the whole draft class. They have 6 picks, Blake. They may actually come out of this thing with 6 picks, even more if they trade down.
You're crazy.
You're
crazy.
This isn't Carolina.
Can Vancouver accumulate picks? Like, you talked to me about Columbus goaltenders having to come from Eastern Europe. Like, is Vancouver allowed to trade down and accumulate picks?
Here's something funny before I leave. Real quick before I leave, that the goalie that Columbus just took.
Yeah.
I got a text immediately after from a Teams guy going, he's not even 18 years old. I was like, well, how old is he? But I went and jumped on with you guys, so I haven't actually found out. But the Russian age rumors are back, and they're better than ever.
Oh, my goodness. Here we go. The forged birth certificates from the Dominican Republic baseball hounds to Russian hockey scouts. And we still await a couple of British Columbians in this first round, Lakovic and Ravensburgen. So we want to see them. Mm-hmm. We want to see them selected before the night, this interminable night, is through. Thank you, Cam. Until next week.
All right, cheers, boys.
Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects, their director of film scouting and content, who is a weekly regular with us. There's now a child on stage, and Gary's getting very loose here.
Yeah,
I wonder if Gary has a martini over a side stage left or something. Yeah, Gary is also filling the very important purpose of holding the draftee's hat while he puts the jersey on, Blake, and then Gary presents him.
That's a highly paid hat rack.
You can tell Gary is feeling like the star of this show. He tends to cut loose a little bit on the draft. He likes that master of ceremonies. He tends to interact with the crowd, but, barring the big groups of club personnel that come up to the stage.
Him.
Exactly. Like Gary is a song and dance act here. He's a Sammy Davis on stage there in Los Angeles, entertaining the masses with all his antics.
Jeff with a super chat here, guys.
Yes, let's get to it.
Thank you from the BC Mental Health Foundation. Are one of Demko Shilov's definitely traded this summer, given Artie needs waivers next season? Also, if it helps, I can unsubscribe and resubscribe on YouTube 120 times. It does not work that way, Jeff.
I don't think that counts. It
does not work that way.
Jeff, we talked about this earlier in the week. There are goaltenders of Artur Shilov's caliber, resume, or more regarded that are snuck through waivers when teams set their roster in September every year. We saw it with Jacob Markstrom once upon a time. That is the best time to sneak a player through waivers and get him down to the farm. Now, that helps you the first time, of course. It does not help you if you have to bring him back up, right, in an injury situation and get him back down. Right now, I think we're looking at a scenario where the Canucks are going to keep all three, but did hear this week that Shilovs may have a little bit more trade luster than most AHL goaltenders of some accomplishment, in part because of what he did in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year against Nashville and Edmonton, in part because of how he stepped up in a big way for Latvia. The issue with Shilovs from a acquisition point of view is if you're going to acquire him, you've got to have him in the NHL and you've got to play him. We saw what he was like when he had to sit for long stretches of time last year as a pure backup. So that to me is a complication, but could I see it? Yeah, I could see it, particularly since the events of these last 24, 48 hours, Blake, where they weren't able to execute a trade prior to the draft, they weren't able to use number 15th overall to find that elusive second line center. So, yeah, I would think there are probably some things on the board for the Vancouver Canucks that they didn't want to consider or was down their list of priorities because of the way this thing has played out here, where the 15th overall wasn't used in capital to find a roster forward.
Well, look at the standings in reverse to see who would have first kick at the can at Artie Shilov's. And you look at a team like San Jose, how set are they in goal? Or in the backup?
I think they're going to play a Scaroff a lot next year. He's a first overall pick or a first round pick. He's a very good prospect.
They got a lot of Russian goalies, by the way.
They traded for him with the Nashville Predators. So
Georgiev's UFA, so they probably let him walk. Romanov is there as well. You want to go too deep, it's not a bad team to do that with. Does Nashville add to its stable by plucking Shilovs off of waivers? I mean, if you see that coming, you might say, hey, let's just hold. Vancouver's got to get rid of one of these guys.
Yeah, or you carry 3 goaltenders early, which is available to you.
Yep.
Or you have a goaltender on injured reserve, which may be available to you. Who knows? Or you're trading one of Thatcher or Lankinen, right? And Lankinen's got trade protection that kicks in Tuesday. So if that's happening soon. And in Demko's case, there's no trade protection at all.
One last super chat before we go. Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. If they are smart, they're letting what they have fill roles to increase asset value or be a home run themselves. Development is our way forward. Well, it's just they're not in that mode. You have to be realistic, Ryan. They want to win now.
Yeah. There is no patience there. They want immediate gratification. And that's been the way the franchise has been governed and managed for a decade now. And that's why the chairman got booed during a championship celebration. Yesterday,
championship
celebration should be the happiest moment of all time for your fan base, right? And yet he was still unpopular in that moment. Maybe he's catching the drift. Maybe nobody wants to buy out just Paulo. Maybe somebody wants the whole kit and caboodle. We'll see. Anyways, that's going to conclude this segment, and it's been a lengthy one. The draft going on. We got Evander Kane coming up. We'll hear from the new Vancouver Canuck, Vancouver's own Evander Kane, some of his comments from yesterday. And then later in the program, we'll discuss a big weekend for the Whitecaps, Lions, and Canadian soccer. That's all coming up on Sekeres and Price. Evander Kane coming up next. First, our Bet365 bets of the day, Blake Price. And I had been fattening up on NHL Draft props. I love the fact that they were there all week. Today, it could be 2 backup quarterbacks in Regina, so I'm going under 49.5 points in the Lions Rough Riders game tomorrow from the Saskatchewan Capital.
I'm looking at Whitecaps and LAFC. It's the swan song for Olivier Giroud before he heads back to Europe. I thought it would be a bigger number. It's plus 150. He doesn't score. Why is it plus 150? The Whitecaps need scoring from anybody right now with their guys away right now still. So Pedro still played pretty well in the defeat on Wednesday. Pedro Vite to score a goal because he's kind of due now to get a goal. He's got a handful, almost a handful already. Plus 375 on a Pedro Vite goal. Now we're talking.
This segment, a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. Use code NATION when doing so. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. We'll hear from Evander Kane coming up next. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. Well, on Thursday, Evander Kane met the media here at Rogers Arena, Vancouver's own, after the trade from the Edmonton Oilers. And we were reminded, if you hadn't heard Evander speak in some time, just how smart and well-spoken he is. Like, he has always been a very good communicator. And I think we heard some of that as well. I didn't love all the answers, Blake, and in terms of the accountability, the responsibility. But
there's some strange ones there.
Well, there's a couple ones. So let's hear from him here. First, he took issue with questions using the word character. Here's Kane.
Character is a word that likes to get tossed out very casually. It can be often used as a weapon when describing somebody. And I think, what real character is somebody who shows you who they are when there's scrutiny and adversity, and how they handle that. And I think, obviously there's been some difficult times for myself, but I think I've come out of it better off and better for it. And I think, you learn and you grow each and every year. And for me, that's no different.
He got around, I think, to the right answer there, and that was kind of a theme. We're going to play a clip here in a second about his story being well documented, but what did you hear there?
That particular clip was not bad. Was not as bad anyways. Some of the other ones, which seemed to diminish and seem to almost, make him out as the victim here in his life. And so I didn't love those, and we can listen on here, but that one was a little bit more conceding of the fact that, again, he says difficulties in my life that I came out the better for it.
Yep.
It doesn't assign blame to anybody. It's pretty agnostic, which, sometimes you just got to say, I've had I've created some tough times for myself, but I've moved on. Like he seems to be reluctant to accept any blame.
On the sword. Yeah.
And that, again, to use his own word, that builds character. When you admit your own faults, like, no one thinks you're weak if you do that.
Yeah, I agree. I would have thought at 34 we heard of a little more mea culpa. Here's the other clip, and this is our friend Patrick Johnson questioning him about his story being well documented. Take a listen.
Documented in a way where there's not all the information. There's some inaccuracies, and there's some.
What I was going to say was, it hasn't been a thing at all. There hasn't been discussion about any of that since you got to Edmonton. Feels like you've matured quite a bit. Is that your feeling? Are you a new guy from who you were 10 years ago?
Am I a new guy? No. No, I'm the same guy. I think, if you're not improving in all aspects of your life, you're probably not where you want to be. And I don't think there's anybody in this room that isn't a better off, or have learned from their mistakes, or learned from positive experiences to make them better moving forward. So for me, I think it's, Edmonton was great. Edmonton brought me into their organization, and like I said earlier, embraced me. And, the city kind of fell in love with me, and I kind of fell in love with the city. And we had a lot of on-ice success as well. So it was a great experience, and I'm hoping that can continue here in Vancouver coming back home.
And that part of it was very encouraging, right? Because all the reports from Edmonton was, there wasn't any problems here on the ice or off the ice. When he pushed back on his story not being well documented, saying not all the information is out there and some was inaccurate, and Blake and I went through this after the trade, but there were a couple of allegations of assault in 2016 against Evander Kane, one of which he was charged, and the charges were later dropped. The other appears like nothing went forward criminally, and just on the civil side of things. And then you get to the period of time with his now ex-wife and the allegation that he was in so deep with his gambling addiction that he was betting on hockey games and throwing hockey games. And the National Hockey League investigated that and could not find any wrongdoing. So I can understand that part of it because that is quite a charge to levy against a pro athlete, right? That you're throwing games like nobody in the NHL orbit would want any part of you if that was brought to the table. And so I can understand him still being a little sore that that was out there for a period of time until the NHL was able to complete its investigation and find the charges unsubstantiated.
Yeah, and just because he got into trouble in other parts in his life doesn't mean that every single thing that's said about him is true. But when you've created that much noise around yourself for a lot of your life, and you know, there's a lot of stuff that clearly did stick. You know, police lay charges because they see a lot that they don't like, and they'll have a different threshold than a prosecutor will, obviously, but you know, there was enough noise around his life. Some of it, you know, again, the fake COVID card stuff, all that. There's enough there that you're just think, still, you do still need to take accountability here.
Right.
That you fostered an environment where when an allegation comes up, people immediately, you know, say guilty to you because you've created that noise.
You haven't earned the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah, you've
with
lost
a lot
that
of
benefit.
people.
Yeah.
You've lost people. And I mean, the COVID card thing was just, I mean, that's immaturity, and that's thinking you're going to get away with special privileges.
Yeah.
In terms of his style on the ice, and I think this was a bit of a question for the folks in Edmonton, the Alberta Capital, when he was dropped back into a playoff lineup. Okay, he's an older player. It's a lot of miles, a lot of surgeries now on that body. Is he going to play the same rambunctious style? Well, he certainly played it in the playoffs, and he was asked about it yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I've played that style ever since I was 8 years old here in Vancouver. So nothing's going to change. Nothing's really changed when it comes to, you know, how I play and what I bring on the ice. You know, I'm very confident in what I can do, and I think Vancouver is going to provide me a really good opportunity to do that.
Yeah. They need that. They need that guy. Hard skill, agitator, pain in the ass to play against, as Patrick Alvin noted in his presser.
Again, if I strip it down here, and if I say if Evander Kane doesn't have any of the noise around him from his, and the Canucks just signed free agent Evander Kane to a 1 year, $5 million contract, what would you think at this point in the proceedings? And I think mostly people would be okay with it. It'd probably still be a little bit of a high number, given that he didn't play last year. But
it'd be a high number for sure. But
but I mean, it's a 30-goal scorer. You know, like it's
yeah.
I mean, you got to pay.
I mean, in the new world, like, I mean, if he's a 20 to 25 goal scorer who is one of those guys who really riles up and gets under the skin of opponents, and especially if he can draw penalties, that is worth something. You know, he's a big physical guy too. So there is a world where this could turn out really, really well. We don't have the clip. He did also talk about he had never heard the phrase contract year or walk year thrown around as much as it has been thrown around with him after this move. So it tells me he's listening and he's reading everything out there, Blake. That was another part of the story.
But again, very strange. Like, we throw around contract here all the time. Like,
yeah. I think he was a little miffed that people anticipated he's going to have a great year because he's playing for a contract, as though he wouldn't try as hard in years where he was under contract.
Too sensitive, Evander. Too sensitive.
Yeah. Okay. Lastly, nice suits and fast cars. It was a beauty, yeah? The blue and the green, the Canucks colors, and he said he had that suit from way back. That was not a new purchase. It's my grandmother's tartan as well, Blake. So I was very pleased to see that. Here's Evander on all his flash.
With regards to what I wear, what I drive in during the playoffs, you know, they're very nice suits. So if you don't like really nice suits and you want to see me coming in looking like a slob, I mean, I can do that too if you want. So, I think, you know, everybody seemed incredibly welcoming. They want to have me here, which is a nice feeling. And, you know, when you feel wanted, you want to perform at your best. So I'm looking forward to hopefully doing that on the ice.
Really nice suits, Blake.
Well, he's also. I mean, I think people have been focused on the clothing thing. There's a reason why it's in the CBA, not his clothing per se, but just around the league, Mitch Marner and others too. He's exonerated a little bit by this new CBA.
Yeah,
it's like you wear whatever you want. There shall be no more scrutiny because everybody's allowed to wear what they want. So in some sense, Kane avoids that storyline. That it still would have been ridiculous, but you know that it rears its head.
Yep.
But that part, he gets to take the exit ramp there because it's not an issue anymore.
Here's the other thing I found myself thinking about this acquisition, and particularly after hearing Evander speak, because we had Evander on the Kane, had Evander Kane on the show several times years ago. Actually caused a little controversy once upon a time when, you remember, we were up at the Moj tournament and I asked him about not wanting to be in Winnipeg, and he sort of gave me the, don't ask. But here's what I found myself thinking. We've got a guy who's a terrific talker, communicator. He's not afraid to say things either. He marches to his own drumbeat. He is very much his own man, Evander. He's willing to speak and have the engagement with the fans. Like, I think he does enjoy that part of the job where some guys don't, and particularly in a Canadian market.
He enjoys the showmanship.
He enjoys the showmanship, and he plays a loud game on the ice. So I added up those three things, Blake. Like, this is a fun player. Like, I know there are some Canucks fans out there that are worried he's going to be a sideshow, more drama, and I completely get that coming off the season that we just witnessed. But I also think there's a world where he's just kind of the guy he is in Edmonton, but bringing all the aspects of his personality and his game to the Canucks, which I think could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risky move on a hockey level. It's a risky move on a PR level. But I will not throw out, it's a non-zero possibility that it works out okay for the Vancouver Canucks. So he's here, and I don't blame a segment of fans that just say, I'm not going to cheer for this guy. And that's fine, but he is here, like it or not. He is going to play for the Vancouver Canucks, and he may be of help.
Yeah, and as I said yesterday, he is playing for his final NHL contract. I think that matters to him. We should absolutely see the best of him on and off the ice. Mm-hmm. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Book your stay here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rates on blackout date supply based on availability. Tuesday. Reminder, the big daily face-off free agency special. It gets going at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Tyler Yaremchuk with all his analysts, Jeff Merrick, Hart Levine of Puckpedia for all the contract data, Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby, Colby Cohen, Johnny Lazarus. They'll be breaking it all down as the deals come in from around the league. And, of course, later in the day, we will be breaking down what the Canucks do or don't do. But check out the Daily Face-Off live free agency special, 8 a.m. on the Daily Face-Off YouTube channel, brought to you by the Nation Network. Well, could very well be a battle of backup quarterbacks in Regina tomorrow, where the BC Lions face the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who have already scratched starting quarterback Trevor Harris. Poor Trevor, he's out with another concussion. I mean, I don't know how many he needs to have here. Former Stamp Jake Mayer will start for Saskatchewan. Nathan Rourke is listed as a game-time decision for BC. He still looks like he's having trouble putting any kind of zip on the football for those who were at practice this week. So it could very well be Jeremiah Mazzoli, or it could very well be sort of a stripped down BC Lions offense where you're not asking Rourke to make a lot of the difficult, longer or quicker throws. 5 changes for BC on the lineup. Chris Slugger, who's normally a guard, is going to try and play right tackle here because Dejan Allen is injured. Marcus Moore is back at defensive tackle for Jonah Tavai. And that newcomer we talked about from Kansas State, Phillip Brooks, he's getting thrown right in the fire there, likely to return kicks. Yeah, I was quite surprised on.
I like this from Masoli, though, because you might have, I know he's a veteran, but you might have a little bit of you're still a backup. You might have a little bit of nerves built up if you're going out there to try to beat their number one. And the Riders look like they're a pretty good team this year.
3-0.
But when you know it's a backup on the other side, if you're Jeremiah Masoli, you're probably going, why, I think I might be as good as the other guy, the number one. I know I'm better than their backup, for God's sakes. So you might get the best out of Jeremiah Masoli as well.
The other thing is you may not need a lot of points to keep up here, Blake.
That's right. That's right.
Last week after Winnipeg went right down the field and scored, I think Mazzoli and the Lions offense went, okay, we're going to need some points here today.
Yeah.
It turned out the defense really turned it around after that. But here's the other thing. Lions starting 8 Canadians here. So if they do have to substitute Masoli for Rourke, even if it's before Rourke takes a snap, they can do so without having to make another change, swapping a Canadian for an American. This is the first time they've played heavy with Canadians, started heavy with Canadians.
Probably for that reason, though, just in case.
It had been the minimum 7 through the first 3 weeks. The Whitecaps have reportedly re-signed Pedro Vite to a $1.7 million contract, according to Manuel Veth of Transfer Market. It will run to 2029, and it will not make him a DP. First of all, explain the DP or not to DP here for everybody, and then explain that, this doesn't necessarily mean that Vite is here till 2029. It's more a protection of the asset for Axel Schuster and Whitecaps FC.
Well, there's 2 different ways to structure your roster in Major League Soccer. You have 2 DPs and 4 U22 initiative players, or you can go 3 and 3. The Whitecaps currently are under the 2 DP rule. They'd like to keep that DP slot open, I think, just in case somebody stumbles into their orbit here in the next transfer window, and also allows them to bring in some U22 help as well. So you want to keep DP slots open just in case. And if you can tam a guy down and keep him just below the threshold, as they've done with Pedro, then that's fabulous. The contract is through to 2029, but that's insurance, because you just don't want a guy departing on a free transfer. As long as he's your property, then when he transfers to Botafogo or Club Bruges, you get the money. And so the Whitecaps want to make sure that they have the ability to sell on with Pedro Vite. That being said, and we've heard this theory floated before, he is playing at such a high level right now in Major League Soccer. He wants to look as good as possible through Ecuadorian eyes before the World Cup, that he probably doesn't want to risk changing what he knows is working, because if he transfers to somewhere in Europe or in Brazil and Argentina, but gets down the pecking order, doesn't get the playing time, is Ecuador going to continue to feed him more playing time like they've been doing, or are they going to reduce that? So he wants to be at that World Cup playing maybe in the starting 11 for Ecuador. The best way for him to do that is to play at an elite level with this club. So he's here through next summer at least.
I realize it's a business, and I realize MLS isn't the top league in the world, and I realize that young players, as they take off in their careers, are going to look elsewhere. I just hope he stays in Vancouver for the next little while. He's been so much fun to watch play, and it's been fun to watch him grow and turn into the player that he has turned into. Caps in LA Sunday to face LAFC in what will be Olivier Giroud's farewell game in MLS.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, Olivier. Salut la visite. His heart never seemed to be in MLS. In fact, it kind of reminded me of 10, 15 years ago, Blake, when guys like Thierry Henry, Wayne Rooney would come over, play a few games and then go, this is not for me. He was done giving Fs. I saw your tweets. What MLS coach told you, when he's on the pitch, it's like we're playing against 10.
Yeah. Like his give a bleep meter.
It's quite a thing to say about a guy who at one point was one of the best in the world.
No, it was a worthwhile signing. I think there was a good gamble there that he could be a great poacher at this point in his career, but he is not, and his heart wasn't in it on or off the pitch, I don't think. So He's
No.
going back to Lille, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not like LA? Anyways,
Interesting to note, though, of course, Jonathan David's at Lille for now. So
he's moving on, though. He got
Yes.
the big farewell from the fans. It's hilarious. Like, he's going on to replace Jonathan, the Canadian striker, who is moving on to bigger and better things. Testament to Jonathan David and Canadian soccer. It's Canada Guatemala earlier Sunday. We mentioned this yesterday. You can watch Canada Guatemala and maybe hit up the beach or something like that. Come back for the Caps game in the standalone evening window on MLS, Apple TV. This is a Gold Cup quarterfinal, of course, for Canada. Got a win to advance. And today they announced a friendly versus number 14 Colombia, October 14th. This is in New Jersey. The Colombians picked the venue here. Colombia was the finalist in that Copa last year against Argentina.
great test.
A really stiff test for Canada. And of course, they'll be heading over to Europe in September prior to this Colombia match for some tests as well, including
we used to
against
dream
Wales.
about high-level friendlies, tune-ups like this, and
Oh,
now
yeah.
there's
This is
3 in
real
a
deal.
row this fall window.
Yeah.
It's absolutely spectacular. The downside is, don't think Fonzie's going to be. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I would be surprised if Fonzie plays in those 3, but hopefully he does.
It's Wales and who else?
Romania.
Right. It's Romania on September 5th, Wales on September 9th, and then Tuesday, October 14th, Colombia. And all of them on the road are neutral venues, and then you need that too, right?
Yep.
Like, let's play in tough environments. All is not well in Raptorland. Masai Ujiri, the architect who brought Toronto its only NBA title and brought so many new fans on board across Canada with his We the North swagger, is out as team president. Keith Pelly, the new MLSE boss, has now moved on 3 team presidents in the company's portfolio, including Brendan Shanahan with the Leafs and the TFC. It doesn't appear he approves of the president-GM structure.
Well, you say that, but then they promise that they're going to hire somebody.
That was so bizarre.
Yeah, because that was what I read too, is that they just don't want
How
to
does
waste
your
money on
basketball
presidents.
team need a president, but your hockey team doesn't need it? It's so odd.
Well, he said it's different. That was his reasoning. Like Keith a lot, but he needed more than it's just different.
Also, this is a huge gamble from Pelly. Like, you knew you had a baseline of competency with this manager. Like, you knew you had a guy who is no worse than top 10, right? In terms of an NBA manager, personnel chief. You better hire someone good. Because here's the other thing. He had done a fair bit of the legwork of getting the roster back to a place where it can now compete again in the East.
Well,
with the
people
Brandon
wanted to
Ingram
sign with Toronto to play for Masai Ujiri.
That's it.
And that's not the case for the GM right now. And, he was apparently amongst he was a podium executive in terms of salary in the NBA.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, yeah, they can save a lot of money by turfing him, but you better bring in somebody who's got a reputation that people want to play for, because that's what he was. He was a rainmaker for talent.
And what I don't get is, okay, so you're bringing this president in. Is he going to want to work with Webster, your GM? And then the other part I don't get, and the ask from Ujiri was that this only get announced after the draft. Like, you're apparently in a Giannis derby, right? Like, you're out there on the market looking to add a player via trade, and big names via trade. They were linked to Kevin Durant as well. There's all this talk about an RJ Barrett trade, which is a big trade for you because he led the team in scoring. I just don't understand why you would execute this move right now.
Giannis was coming to play for Masai. Like, I don't think Giannis is coming now.
If you fired the guy who was going to lure Giannis, holy shit. I mean, this is an all-time gaffe.
Yeah.
Like, if there's even a whisper of that going forward from Shams or from Windhorse or any of the NBA insiders, like, oh, now that Masai isn't in Toronto, Giannis's interest in the Raptors is less.
Well, just wait.
That
Just
is
wait.
devastating for you as Pelly. Also, you noted this as well. Their first-round pick, Colin Murray Boyles, an undersized center from South Carolina, he didn't appear too thrilled to be selected by the Raptors 9th overall.
He clarified later. He said, "No, it was pure gobsmack that the journey to the NBA was finally here. But you'll have to forgive us if we went down the other road." I mean, everybody in his entourage was subdued. Like there was a lady in the red dress there who like couldn't even smile. Like it was like a golf clap and like deadpan face. Like. I'm glad he clarified, and he did. Yeah. He said, "I'm pumped to be there." Blah, blah. Like, okay, that's better than Steve Francis gave us. But my goodness, it was something.
Yeah. Seas were rained out Thursday. They're at it today on a Friday nooner. Tomorrow, Marvel Superhero Day at the Nat with a comic book giveaway, so get there early. White Spot Family Fun Sunday with a Stuart Baroa bobblehead giveaway. Of course, the kids can run the bases for free after the ball game, and a special Canada Day Tuesday nooner. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232. Results of the Whistler Golf Club poll question from Thursday. We asked you, do you see Evander Kane helping Elias Pettersson's bounce back? Yes or no, people said.
I knew it was close at the start. Who won now? I'll say yes won.
Yes won.
53.
55. Doug, put them on a line together. Let Kane prove he has Petey's back. They can become a force. Sean says, newsflash, he's not a top 6 forward. Okay. Whereas your koozie will take a lot of pressure off Petey being an agitator and very well in front of the net. And Hockey Rule says Pettersson's biggest knock last year was that he just didn't shoot enough with Kane here providing the screen. Petey just has to concentrate on shooting the puck on net. Kane will be responsible in front of the net for the rebounds and tip-ins. It's not complicated. No, it is not. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. I had none.
You were pretty good. You're amongst the best.
Nothing to note. The one thing I should have said, and could have actually mentioned it here as well, there was a Canadian selected in the first round of the NBA draft. Will Riley of Kitchener, Ontario, a 21st overall, drafted by the Utah Jazz, but being traded to Washington, Blake. So he wore the Utah stuff, but even though he's...
And Nembhard 2.0 signed after the draft.
That's right. Ryan Nembhard, Andrew's brother. Also a Gonzaga guy. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time, typically noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. And keep it local.